Chapter 2804. Blood Sword Sky. Mu Yi shouted as he held the blood-colored sword with both hands and slashed out a sky full of sword light. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, thousands of blood-colored swords appeared, forming a sword net that covered the sky and covered the sun, covering a radius of 50 kilometers. The entire arena space was sealed by Mu Ye's sword formation. An invisible pressure as heavy as a mountain ruthlessly suppressed Ji Tianxing. The thousands of blood swords were also ready to attack, locking onto Ji Tianxing's divine soul. Moreover, Mu Yi had poured 6 types of nomological powers into this sword formation. Only a mid-level divine lord could do such a method of superimposing nomological powers. From this, it could be seen that his talent was very strong, far surpassing his peers. Little bastard, the arena has been sealed by my sky sword formation. You've lost for sure. Kneel down and beg for mercy now, kowtow to me and admit your mistakes. Only then can you avoid physical pain. Otherwise, this young master will definitely cut you into pieces and chop you into pieces. The competition between the 5 great families and the city lord's mansion was very particular about stopping at a certain point. After all, everyone was in Qingshan City. There was no need to kill someone and form a deep grudge. However, Mu Yi was a disciple of the Blood Sword sect and had always been arrogant and domineering. Ji Tianxing had angered him, so he wanted to kill him in front of everyone to vent his anger. However, Ji Tianxing's expression did not change and his heart did not fluctuate at all. He even wanted to laugh. With this lousy sword formation? He raised his eyebrows and sneered disdainfully. You're just showing off in front of an expert. I'll let you see a true sword Dao divine ability. As he spoke, he raised his right hand and pointed at the sky. Sword come. Suddenly, thousands of 5-colored light spots appeared in the sky above the arena and poured down like a meteor shower. After a short breath, more than 3,000 5-colored swords descended on the arena and suppressed Mu Ye's sword formation with an unparalleled momentum. Each 5-colored sword was thousands of feet long and contained 5-colored divine lightning and several types of nomological powers. The 3,000 swords slammed down at the same time, and their power was extremely powerful and terrifying. Seeing such a shocking sword Dao divine ability and feeling the unparalleled pressure, Mu Ye's expression changed on the spot, revealing a look of horror. He was vigilant and wanted to counterattack, but it was already too late. Boom, boom, boom. Boom boom boom. A series of earth-shattering explosions erupted on the arena and resounded through the clouds. More than 3,000 5-colored swords instantly drowned the blood-colored sword formation. Thousands of blood-colored giant swords were immediately destroyed and shattered into pieces that filled the sky. In the blink of an eye, Mu Yi's sword formation was destroyed. Of course. However, he was a genius after all. He immediately circulated his energy to suppress his injuries. He sword Dao of. Mu Yi's was his blood sword of attack. Blood Azura. Bloods of blood of blood demon blood of its. This was a blood-red, bony Azura. It had 4 arms and 4 legs and 4 wings on its back. Black spikes extended from the joints of its body. There were sharp, serrated bone blades on its arms, thighs and wings. Even its long tail was curved like a scorpion's, flashing with a frightening cold light. This Azura beast with a ferocious appearance and murderous aura was extremely shocking to the eye. All the aristocratic families and hundreds of thousands of people were shocked, their eyes wide with disbelief. Many of the god race's eyes were filled with surprise and anticipation. Their heartbeats quickened. Everyone wanted to see if Mu Yi, forced to use his trump card divine ability, could turn the tables. After all, Mu Yi, whose blood Azura beast, was filled with murderous aura. Brat die. The blood Azura beast roared. It waved its arms and wings crazily, unleashing countless blood blades. At least 6,000 blood-colored blades of light formed a terrifying hurricane that swept toward Ji Tianxing. At the critical moment, Ji Tianxing's body emitted a golden light as he used his transformation divine ability. Celestial Dragon Tyrant Body. With a flash of golden light, he turned into a giant of golden light 3,000 meters tall. His body was covered in dark golden dragon scales. He was like a war god transformed from a divine dragon, dazzling and sacred. In comparison, the blood Azura beast was ugly and ferocious, evil and sinister. Ji Tianxing waved his left hand and growled, "Kill." At that moment, the 3,000 over 5-colored huge swords formed a sword array and charged towards the bloodshed Azura. They were as fast as lightning. Ping 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 ping. The 5-colored swords clashed with the blood-colored blades, creating a deafening sound that didn't stop. The ring was shaken to the point of shaking, and the entire square was trembling non-stop. This time, all the aristocratic families and hundreds of thousands of people finally saw the battle between the strongest geniuses. The divine ability and consummate divine ability of both sides dazzled the crowd and made their blood boil. Countless people cheered and shouted excitedly. Soon the clash between the 5-colored swords and the blood-colored blades ended. The thousands of blood-colored blades were all defeated, turning into a blood-colored light that covered the entire arena. 80% of the 5-colored swords were destroyed, with only 200 remaining. They all slashed at the blood Azura beast. The blood Azura beast turned into a blood-colored light and teleported away as fast as lightning. If he couldn't dodge, he would use his blade-like arms and wings to defeat the 5-colored swords. Ping ping ping. After 3 breaths of time, the 5-colored swords were all defeated by the blood Azura beast. He let out a sigh of relief and was about to mock Ji Tianxing. But he suddenly discovered that Ji Tianxing had disappeared. He looked around, searching the entire arena, but he couldn't find the golden-armored giant. Not good. He immediately realized that something was wrong, and a strong sense of danger arose in his heart. But it was too late. The golden-armored giant appeared above his head, waving his fists with all his strength and smashing down. Heaven-capturing dragon claw. The golden-armored giant's fists were like 2 dragon claws that covered the sky as they struck the blood Azura beast. Boom. Ka. A rumble that shook the heavens and the earth and resounded throughout the universe suddenly exploded out on the arena. The golden light was dazzling and blood splashed. A destructive shockwave spread out in all directions. Immediately the arena shook crazily from the impact. The monarch-grade god arrays that enveloped the arena were also shaken violently, and many cracks appeared on them. The impact of Ji Tianxing and Mu Ye's collision was comparable to that of a god monarch. This scene made the experts of the various aristocratic families shudder with fear and shock. The hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza were even more excited, and they let out shouts that shook the heavens. After a long time, the deafening explosion finally dissipated. The golden light and blood light that filled the arena also gradually dimmed. Only then did the crowd see the situation clearly. The battle had ended. Ji Tianxing returned to his original state. His white robe fluttered as he stood in the sky, safe and sound. The blood Azura beast also disappeared. Mu Yi returned to his original state, lying on the ground covered in blood and twitching. At least a few dozen bones in his body were broken, and his entire body was curled up like a roasted lobster. Miserable, truly miserable. End of chapter. Chapter 2805. The battle between Ji Tianxing and Mu Yi had ended. Although Mu Yi hadn't admitted defeat yet, everyone knew that the outcome had been decided. The Qi family had won. The martial arts competition had ended. The people from the aristocratic families in the sky looked at this scene in astonishment. Their expressions were extremely complicated. However, no one spoke nor did they exclaim or discuss. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing as if they wanted to see through him. After a short moment of silence, the hundreds of thousands of people in the square erupted into earth-shattering cheers and shouts. Everyone was very excited, and they had no choice but to shout and roar loudly to vent the shock in their hearts. After all, this martial arts competition was too exciting. The process was full of twists and turns, but the final result was also unexpected. Before the start of the martial arts competition, everyone thought that the result would be the same as before, with Yuanjia winning. However, they didn't expect that the Qi family's guardian would be able to kill the Feng brothers in one move. The Qi family's guardian was very mysterious and powerful, enough to threaten Yuanjia. However, the Lu family's blood sword sect disciple appeared, and his performance was even more monstrous and powerful. Then the Qi family's guardian defeated Yuanjia. Mu Yi, who everyone thought highly of, was also defeated by the Qi family's guardian. This was something no one had expected. It was because of the appearance of Ji Tianxing and Mu Yi that the martial arts competition was so exciting. How could the hundreds of thousands of spectators not be excited to see the battle between the strongest geniuses? After a long while, Mu Yi, who was badly injured, struggled to stand up. He glared hatefully at Ji Tianqing and transmitted his voice. Brat, no matter who you are, you're dead for daring to ruin my plans. You're in big trouble, just wait for the blood sword sect's revenge. After he finished speaking, Mu Yi staggered away and flew out of the arena. He didn't return to the Lu family's team, but directly left the square and rushed back to the Lu family's residence. Today he had suffered a big setback in front of everyone and he was truly ashamed and furious. He didn't want to stay in Qingshan City for a moment, and only wanted to return to the Blood Sword sect as soon as possible. After Mu Yi left, the Vice City Lord announced the result in a loud voice. I declare that the Qi clan has won the final battle. The loud and clear sound waves spread throughout the square, reverberating between heaven and earth. Countless commoners were still discussing, unwilling to leave the square. The people from the Feng family, Qi family, Yuqi family, and the City Lord's mansion all had complicated feelings. Their eyes were also somewhat gloomy. However, the people in charge of each family still had to maintain their poise. They barely squeezed out a smile and congratulated Qi Tianlong across the air. Yuan Jie didn't even want to say a word. He turned around and left with a dark face. The people of the Lu clan were the angriest and their expressions were the ugliest. They didn't even congratulate the Qi family as they hurriedly left the square. After all, they had come here today full of hope, thinking that the profound light cave was already in the bag of the Lu family. However, the final outcome was beyond the Lu family's expectations. In such a terrible mood, it was already very restrained of them not to have a conflict with the Qi family. Qi Tianlong stood in the sky, smiling as he looked at the leaders of the major families. Seeing everyone bowing and congratulating him, he also smiled and cupped his hands in return. He had a smile on his face. On the surface, he looked indifferent, having the bearing of a superior. However, in reality he was already overjoyed. He wanted nothing more than to laugh wildly. My Qi family discovered the profound light cave, but the City Lord's mansion took advantage of it, allowing them to occupy it for a whole 70 years. Due to the rules agreed upon by the major families, we could only suffer in silence. We endured for so many years. Now we have finally taken back the profound light cave. Those bastards from the other families are hypocritically congratulating me, but in their hearts, they must have gone crazy with jealousy, right? This young Master Tianqing is really amazing. It's really an eye-opener. And those bastards from the Blood Sword sect, they bullied my Qi family before. I'm afraid they're vomiting blood now, right? A series of thoughts flashed through Qi Tianlong's mind. He was secretly delighted. He only felt refreshed and his body and mind were clear. The accumulated grievances of the past were also swept away. In the past he always disliked Qi Huangji and often punished him for failing to live up to his expectations. Now he looked at Qi Huangji with eyes full of affection and appreciation. Young Master Tianqing is really a monster. It's really an eye-opener. But the one with the best vision is still my son Huangji. Qi Tianlong decided that he would definitely reward Qi Huangji and Ji Tianqing after returning. At this moment, the Vice City Lord looked at him and secretly transmitted his voice. Patriarch Qi, the martial competition is over. Go home and make your preparations, then come to the City Lord's mansion. As for the handover of the profound light cave, you need to personally preside over it. That's right. In the past 70 years, the City Lord's mansion had always occupied the profound light cave. Now that the City Lord's mansion had lost, they could only give up the profound light cave due to public trust. The handover process was a bit complicated and would take some time. Qi Tianlong quickly nodded and replied, "Thank you for your reminder, Vice City Lord. This old man will go and prepare now." The Vice City Lord didn't say anything else and left with the City Lord's mansion's people. Qi Tianlong was concerned about the profound light cave, so he didn't waste any time and hurriedly returned to the City Lord's mansion with the Qi family. Not long after, the Feng family, Qi family and Yuqi family's people also left. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square had nothing to watch and gradually dispersed. On the way back to the Qi mansion, Qi Huangji was dancing with joy. He was so excited that his face was flushed red. He grabbed Ji Tianqing's arm with both hands and talked non-stop about the shock in his heart. "Oh my god. Our Qi family actually won. This is too unbelievable. I didn't even dare to think about it before. Brother Tianqing, pinch me and see if I'm dreaming. Mu Yi, that little bastard is so strong but he still lost to you. Previously he humiliated me in front of everyone in our Qi family's main hall. How arrogant. In the end he was beaten up so badly that it was unbearable to look at. He was covered in blood and lying on the stage like a dead dog. Ah. It's too satisfying, too satisfying. Alright, Brother Tianqing, what's your background? Are you a genius disciple of a top sect? Or are you from one of the factions in the Great Yan Empire? Qi Huangji chattered non-stop, only wanting to vent the excitement in his heart. Ji Tianqing only listened silently. Occasionally he would smile but didn't answer. 15 minutes later, the Qi family's fleet drove into the Qi mansion's courtyard. The Qi mansion had already received the news. At this moment, thousands of people were in a frenzy. Under the arrangement of the Qi mansion's housekeeper, hundreds of guards and servants were waiting in line in the square. When the Qi family's fleet returned, everyone cheered loudly to welcome the victorious return of the victors. Qi Tianlong finally didn't have to hide it anymore. He looked up to the sky and laughed heartily. In his excitement, he waved his sleeves and issued an order to double the salary of all the servants and servants. End of chapter. Chapter 2806. An hour later. The people of the Qi residence were still celebrating, and the entire courtyard was filled with joy and excitement. Everyone was gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing the martial arts competition in high spirits. A few attendants and young disciples who were there to watch the competition described the process of the martial arts competition vividly. In order to show the power of the Qi family and Tianqing's martial prowess, they even exaggerated a little. However, no one exposed them. Everyone was immersed in excitement and pride. After all, everyone's salary had been doubled. This was a real benefit. The craftsmen hired by the Qi family were very efficient. In just 2 days, the reconstruction of the mystical courtyard was completed. The newly built courtyard was even more magnificent and luxurious. Of course, the name was changed to the Consecration Courtyard. Qi Huangji followed Ji Tianqing back to the Consecration Courtyard and walked around the courtyard before entering the living room to drink tea and rest. Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He stretched out his hand and asked, "It's done. Where's the household registration card that I wanted?" I was so happy that I actually forgot about it. Qi Huangji slapped his forehead and quickly searched through his spatial ring. After a while he found more than 50 household registration cards and threw them all on the table. "I only have this many here. You can choose whatever you want." Ji Tianqing glanced at the table full of household registration cards and said in a playful tone, "If those ordinary people don't have a household registration card, they have to work in the mines for 500 years to get one. You, on the other hand, have dozens of them with you. What are you trying to do?" Ahem. Qi Huangji coughed awkwardly and explained, "The Great Yan Empire's rule only restricts ordinary people and ascendants. Aristocratic families like the Qi family are not restricted at all. After all, we have a big business and can recruit some experts and servants at any time. Therefore, these household registration cards have to be prepared in advance so that they can be used at any time. Brother Tianqing, you can choose whatever you want." Ji Tianqing naturally did not stand on ceremony. He quickly selected more than 10 household registration cards and put them into his spatial ring. There were men and women, young and old, on these household registration cards. Not only could Yun Yao, Ji Ku and the others use them, but there were also 10 extra tokens for Ji Tianqing to keep. After he accepted the household registration cards, Qi Huangji asked curiously, "Brother Tianqing, I remember you said that you wanted these household registration cards to settle down your family? By the way, where is your family? Now that you've settled down in the Qi clan, this consecration courtyard will be your residence. Why don't you bring your family over as well?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. When the time is right, I will bring them here." Qi Huangji nodded to show that he understood. "That's right. There's no need to rush this matter. When you've truly settled down, you can bring your family over to settle down. My father went to the city lord's mansion to discuss the handover of the Profound Light Cave. It won't be long before our Qi family enters the Profound Light Cave. When the time comes, I'll have to rely on you to help me out." Ji Tianqing looked at him with a frown and asked, "The Qi family has so many people. Can't they control the Profound Light Cave? Why should I join in the fun?" Qi Huangji explained, "Our Qi family will naturally send a lot of people to the Profound Light Cave to carry out mining and smelting. However, we're short of manpower in the short term. We can't give up the Qi family's business and properties just because of the profound light cave. After all, this is our foundation. Therefore, my father will most likely send me to guard the profound light cave. However, I don't have any confidence in my ability. I trust you more than myself. As the saying goes, capable people do more work. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and said with a smile, then this consecration courtyard really has a hard life. My salary isn't high, but I do a lot of work. Not only do I help you win the profound light cave, but I also have to guard it. Most importantly, I've offended the Blood Sword sect, so I have to be on guard against their revenge in the future. Qi Huangji smiled awkwardly and said, this is indeed a bit unreasonable, very unreasonable. However, the Qi family can't afford to offend the Blood Sword sect, so I can't do anything. When the time comes, let's hide as much as possible. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, that's it? Then what do you mean? Qi Huangji looked at him doubtfully. Ji Tianqing took a sip of tea and said slowly, you have to pay more. Qi Huangji's eyes lit up and he slapped the table saying, so simple? Then it's easy. Our family doesn't have anything else but money. As he said that, he got up and was about to leave. Brother, wait here. I'll go get you 50 million divine stones now. Today my father is happy and doubled everyone's salary. Of course you can't be less. Together with the 25 million he didn't give you before, it'll be 75 million in total. Ji Tianqing hurriedly said, it doesn't have to be divine stones. Divine pellets and divine tools of equivalent value are also fine. Qi Huangji had just walked to the door when he stopped and turned back to ask, how about divine beasts? My family has many kinds of divine beast. Don't. Ji Tianqing hurriedly waved his hand to stop him. We don't need divine beast. We can't afford to raise too many of them. Understood. Qi Huangji nodded and ran away quickly. Looking at his back, Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. He sighed and said, Sai, it's lucky that this kid was born into a rich family. Otherwise, who would be able to withstand such a prodigal son? As soon as he finished speaking, a beautiful figure appeared at the door. It was Ning Xiyuan, who was dressed in golden armor. She entered the living room valiantly, bringing with her a faint fragrance. Greetings, young Master Tianqing. She stood in the middle of the living room and cupped her hands at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing looked up at her and raised his eyebrows. Miss Ning, what can I do for you? You flatter me. Ning Xiyuan was modest and said in a gentle tone, I'm here to say goodbye to young Master Tianqing. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Ning Xiyuan nodded. Yes, I came to the Green Mountain City to escort a batch of pets. I should have returned to the Tianxia County the day before yesterday. It was only because of the martial arts competition that I stayed for 2 more days. Now that young Master Tianqing has won a complete victory, the outcome is set. I should leave. Okay, then go. Have a safe trip. Ji Tianqing nodded and waved his hand calmly. Ning Xiyuan was stunned for a moment. She felt ashamed and angry. She had never seen such an insensitive and ungentlemanly guy. But she pursed her lips and suppressed her displeasure. Young Master Tianqing, before I leave, I have something to tell you. Although I couldn't answer your question. Last night I sent a message home and asked my father. My father asked me to tell you that there is more than one boundless heaven continent in the divinity. There is a wider world. If you are interested in this question, you can take some time to go to the Tianxia County. The Ning family will try our best to help you. Chapter 2807. Ning Xiyuan did not leave immediately after saying this. She looked at Ji Tianqing quietly, waiting for his reaction. However, she was disappointed. Ji Tianqing looked calm and said indifferently, thank you for telling me. If I have the chance, I will go to Sky Snow City. Ning Xiyuan was slightly disappointed when she saw that he did not look happy. However, he had promised to visit the Ning family in the future, which comforted Ning Xiyuan a little. She did not say anything more. After saying goodbye, she turned and left. However, as soon as she walked out of the living room door, she ran into Qi Huangji, who was hurrying toward her. Qi Huangji stopped and looked at her in confusion, then looked at Ji Tianqing in the living room. He was wondering if he should leave, but Ning Xiyuan walked past him without looking at him. At that moment, Qi Huangji frowned and felt a little disappointed. Am I so lowly that you don't even want to look at me? However, he immediately suppressed his disappointment and walked quickly into the living room. Master Tianqing, I've prepared everything. As he spoke, Qi Huangji took out a space ring and handed it to Ji Tianxing. There are 25 million godstones in it. The remaining 50 million are all cultivation resources, including divine pills and divine weapons. You can count them. Ji Tianxing took the space ring and put it away. There's no need to count them. I trust you. Qi Huangji was encouraged and felt a little touched. Then neither of them said anything and fell into silence. Qi Huangji drank a cup of tea absent-mindedly. Finally, he could not help but ask tentatively, Brother Tianxing just now? Miss Ning came to see you? Yes. Ji Tianxing nodded and drank his tea expressionlessly. Qi Huangji hesitated and continued to ask, then why did she come to see you? To say goodbye to me. Ji Tianxing still drank his tea calmly, but the smile in his eyes grew wider. Qi Huangji's face was full of surprise and he felt even more disappointed. He muttered, she's not close to you, so why did she bid farewell to you? Moreover, this was the Qi residence. Even if she wanted to say goodbye, she should have said goodbye to me. Ji Tianxing glanced at him. He wanted to laugh but held it in. Qi Huangji looked depressed. After a moment of silence, he asked again, did she say anything else? She invited me to the Ning family. Huh. Qi Huangji's reaction was even more dramatic. He shot to his feet and stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. What is Ning Xian trying to do? She has only met you a few times, but she actually invited you to visit the Ning family? I have an engagement with her, but she has never invited me over for so many years. The more Qi Huangji spoke, the more agitated he became. He bellowed in shame and anger. Damn it. Ning Xian was too despicable. She actually went behind my back to steal from the Qi family. Ji Tianxing looked at him with a smile. He thought that Qi Huangji had finally been angered and awakened his masculine dignity. Unexpectedly, his last sentence made Ji Tianxing spit out a mouthful of tea. Steal from the Qi family? Ji Tianxing looked at him with a frown, his expression a little strange. Qi Huangji said emotionally, yes. You are now the Qi family's consecrator. Today you defeated Yuan Jia and Mu Yi in front of everyone, stunning everyone. A monstrous genius like you has not appeared in the Ning family for hundreds of years. Therefore, the reason why Ning Xian is so close to you is because he wants you to join the Ning family and work for them. Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although what you said makes sense, I feel that you are focusing on the wrong thing. Qi Huangji waved his hand and said, forget it, it's not important. Anyway, I have seen through Ning Xian's intentions. I can't let her succeed. She shouldn't have left the Qi residence yet. I will go find her now and explain it to her. Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and said, Huangji, don't go find her. You don't want to make things difficult for yourself. No, I want to make things difficult for her. Qi Huangji said stubbornly, I want to let her know that there is no way she can steal our Qi family's consecrator. After saying that, he ran away, ignoring Ji Tianxing's dissuasion. Ji Tianxing was a little speechless. He couldn't be bothered with these trivial matters and went into seclusion in the secret chamber. After entering the secret chamber, Ji Tianxing spent a quarter of an hour to organize the spatial ring. Now there were 50 million divine stones and 40 million cultivation resources in his ring. In the next year he didn't have to worry about cultivation resources. Although he helped the Qi family obtain the Cave of Black Light and successfully gained a foothold in Qingshan City. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others also obtained a household registration plate and legal identity. However, he knew that the Lu family and the Blood Sword sect wouldn't let him go so easily. The most important thing now was to increase his strength. Therefore he took out more than 20 divine weapons from his spatial ring. These were all given to him by Qi Huangji. They were all supreme-grade heavenly divine weapons. There were blades, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks and forks. My devouring divine ability can devour the divine energy of heaven and earth, as well as divine stones and divine pills. I wonder if it can devour the energy of divine weapons? Ji Tianxing decided to give it a try. He slowly stretched out his right hand and grabbed a black spear. He started to activate the devouring divine power. Suddenly, a black vortex appeared in his right palm. It emitted a mysterious devouring power that wrapped around the divine spear. The divine energy in the divine spear immediately flowed into the black vortex like water. The divine energy was purified by the heaven-mending orb and became the purest form of divine energy. Half of it was devoured by the heaven-mending orb, and the other half was refined by Ji Tianqing. An hour later, the divine energy in the divine spear was completely devoured. However, the devouring wasn't over yet. The divine spear was slowly shrinking, and the materials inside it were quickly disintegrating. The incomparably pure divine metals and the formations and restrictions inside the divine spear were all devoured by the heaven-mending orb. The spear in Ji Tianqing's hand kept shrinking until it became a black metal ball. 6 hours later, even the black metal ball was devoured. The entire divine spear had disappeared. After the heaven-mending orb obtained a powerful divine energy, it sent half of it to Ji Tianqing. After refining the divine energy, Ji Tianqing felt his strength increase slightly. He smiled and said to himself, "The devouring divine ability and the heaven-mending orb are really amazing. It can even devour divine weapons." Thus he picked up one divine weapon after another. Time passed quickly. 3 days and 3 nights passed unknowingly. Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in the secret room, and no one came to disturb him. In these 3 days he had devoured more than 20 divine weapons, and his strength had increased by about 40%. Then he took out millions of divine stones and metal materials and continued to devour and refine them. This time the cultivation time was even longer. He used a total of 4 days. 4 days later his strength increased by another 60%. In addition to the 40% increase from before, his strength had doubled. Chapter 2808. Ji Tianqing's strength had doubled. However, he was still a long way from reaching the 8th level of the heavenly god realm. After all, he needed to increase his strength by at least 5 times before he could break through to the 8th level. After he finished cultivating, Ji Tianqing did some calculations. In order to double my strength, I've devoured more than 20 divine artifacts, tens of millions of divine stones, and hundreds of divine gold materials. The value of these divine stones and resources is at least 25 million. If I want to break through to the 8th level of the heavenly god realm, won't I need to spend 130 million in resources? Of course, this was just his initial estimation. If he really wanted to break through to the 8th level of the heavenly god realm, the resources he would need would be more than this. Ji Tianqing calmed down and smiled bitterly. Based on my cultivation method, no matter how rich the Qi family is, they won't be able to afford it. Before he went into seclusion, he thought that 90 million was a lot of resources. It would be enough for him to cultivate for at least a year. Now it seemed that the 90 million was nothing. It was not even enough to raise his cultivation level. Looks like I have to think of a way to get more resources. After he collected his thoughts, Ji Tianqing took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and placed it on the stone table. Zhoosh. In a flash, he entered the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and arrived at the distorted space. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Bai Long and Ji Wushuang as well as Qian Yu and Black Dragon were all cultivating in seclusion. The time in the distorted space was still 50 times faster than the outside world. Ji Tianqing spent 10 days in Green Mountain City, but they had already cultivated for more than a year. Of course, they had used up a lot of divine-grade resources. Ji Tianqing could not help but sigh. Luckily, I stored a lot of resources and energy stones in the divine pagoda when I was in the mortal realm. Everyone has reached the heavenly god realm, so those ordinary divine-grade resources are useless. Only those origin stones can support their cultivation for another 8 to 10 years. 8 to 10 years in the distorted space was equivalent to 2 months in the heavenly god realm's time. In other words, Ji Tianqing had to get a lot of cultivation resources in the next 2 months. Otherwise, the cultivation of Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others would be seriously affected. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing felt a bit of pressure. Time was running out. However, he immediately thought of the 5 elements world. There was a huge amount of origin stones hidden in the depths of the Earth's core. Thus he took out the heaven-mending orb and let it float in the air. Shwa. He entered the heaven-mending orb, returned to the 5 elements world, and descended into the Tianqing Divine Kingdom. Tianqing Divine Kingdom's Divine Guard Legion had a special group of guards called the Origin Stone Guards. The duty of the Origin Stone Guards was to guard the Earth's core human tribe in the depths of the Earth's core human tribe and supervise them in mining origin stones. Then they would transport all the source stones they mined to the Tianqing Divine Temple and store them in the secret treasury. Ji Tianqing used his world power to check the situation of the human tribe in the underground cave. After so many years, the human race in the Earth's core was still working hard without complaint. They followed Ji Tianqing's rules and began to mine the origin stone veins in an orderly manner. The Origin Stone guards were also loyal to their duties and carried out their duties. Tianxing was very satisfied. He withdrew his divine sense and entered the top-secret treasury of the Tianxing Divine Temple. He originally thought that after so many years, the number of Origin Stones stored in the treasury would at least exceed 10 million. However, when he saw the situation of the treasury clearly, his eyes immediately dimmed, and he felt a little disappointed. The Origin Stones stored in the treasury were all accurately cut according to the size of a fist. There were a total of more than 5.6 million Origin Stones. If it was in the mortal world in the past, Tianxing would feel gratified and excited when he saw so many Origin Stones. But now he, Yunyao and the others were all heavenly gods. When they were cultivating in seclusion, the speed at which they consumed Origin Stones became faster and faster. A conservative estimate of the 5.6 million Origin Stones was only enough for everyone to cultivate for 100 years. It's too little. The speed at which the Origin Stones are mined can't keep up with the speed at which we consume them. I can only use these Origin Stones to pay for it first. I have to think of a way to get more resources. Thus Tianxing took away 5.6 million Origin Stones and put them all into his spatial ring. He left a handwritten order for the Origin Stone guards and quietly left the 5 elements world. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, he returned to the distorted space. The heaven-mending pearl was also stored in his mind and everything returned to normal. At this moment, a voice sounded behind him. "Master, why are you here?" Tianxing turned his head and saw White Dragon standing 5 steps away, bowing respectfully. "White Dragon, why aren't you cultivating in seclusion?" Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion. White Dragon was stunned for a moment and hurriedly explained with a smile. "Master, don't you understand my personality? How boring is it to cultivate in seclusion here all day? I'm just bored and want to go out for a walk." Although the White Dragon found a reasonable excuse, Tianxing could tell that he was lying. The reason he ended his seclusion must be because there were no more cultivation resources. Without waiting for Tianxing to open his mouth to ask, White Dragon hurriedly changed the topic and asked, "Oh right, Master, how is your development in Xianxia City?" Tianxing nodded and said, "It's already settled down. Master helped the Qi family win the martial arts competition and seized the profound light cave. Now I'm the Qi family's consecrator." He roughly recounted the course of events. White Dragon hurriedly nodded and said, "That's good. For the Qi family to be able to invite Master to be their consecrator, that's their 8 lifetimes worth of good fortune. The other few aristocratic families are unlucky encountering you, Master. They'll definitely die very quickly." Tianxing did not follow up. He took out 500,000 Origin Stones, wrapped them in a ball of golden light, and handed it in front of White Dragon. "Keep these Origin Stones first. Don't delay your cultivation. 4th level Celestial Deity Realm, you can only be a soldier of the city guard in the divine world. You can't do anything big." White Dragon was stunned for a moment, then smiled awkwardly and said, "As expected, I can't hide anything from Master. My cultivation resources have indeed been used up. However, you should give these Origin Stones to Master's wife and junior sister. They need them more." Tianxing shook his head and said, "It's good that you have this intention. However, Master has considered everything and has already prepared them." Only then did White Dragon feel at ease and accept the 500,000 Origin Stones. Tianxing took out another 2.5 million Origin Stones and divided them into 5 portions, giving them to Yunyao, Jiku and the others. Of course, he left after putting down the Origin Stones and did not disturb their seclusion. When he finished and returned to his original spot, White Dragon was still standing there, without any intention of cultivating in seclusion. "Master, I want to stay by your side. Not only can I serve you but I can also see Xianxia City." Tianxing thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "That's good too. Master has already settled down. It's time for you to show yourselves one by one." Thus he brought White Dragon out of the divine pagoda and returned to the secret room. Just as he put the divine pagoda back into his body, the voice of the Qi family's guard came from outside the secret room. "Master, young Master has an urgent matter to discuss with you. Please go to the study to discuss it." Chapter 2809. For the past 8 days, Tianxing had been in seclusion and no one had disturbed him. Sui. flaming. Come. Now that Qi Huangji had sent a guard to him and said that he had something urgent to discuss, something must have happened. Thus, Ji Tianqing walked out of the secret room with Bai Long. The guard was stunned when he saw someone else beside him. However, the guard was smart enough to look away and pretended that he had not seen anything. He bowed and left. Ji Tianqing took Bai Long and strode to the study. The study was very quiet and Qi Huangji was the only one there. When Ji Tianqing and Bai Long entered the study, he was standing in front of the window in a daze with a grave expression. Huangji, what happened? Ji Tianqing asked straightforwardly as soon as he entered the room. Qi Huangji immediately came back to his senses and sighed in relief. Brother Tianqing, you're finally out of seclusion. Halfway through his sentence, his gaze fell on Bai Long and he carefully sized him up. Bai Long was wearing a spotless white robe like Ji Tianqing. However, he was thinner and his face was pale and bloodless. He was devilishly handsome and had waist-length silver hair. Brother Tianqing, who is this young master? Before Ji Tianqing could answer, Bai Long stepped forward and cupped his hands with a smile. I'm Bai Long, master's disciple. Greetings, young Master Qi. Bai Long greeted him with a normal salute. However, his personal style was too prominent. He was frivolous and frivolous. Qi Huangji did not dislike him. Instead, he felt that they were birds of a feather. He smiled and said, Brother Tianqing, you're a genius and the lucky star of the Qi family. I didn't expect your disciple to be a dragon among men, so carefree and unruly. Bai Long smiled and said, You're too humble, young Master Qi. You're also handsome, generous, heroic and wise. I really admire you. Qi Huangji's eyes lit up as he nodded repeatedly. Brother White Dragon, we're on the same side from now on. I guarantee that you'll be free and unfettered in the Qi Mansion in Qingshan City. The two of them felt like old friends at first sight. They appreciated each other and were even about to become sworn brothers. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing pretended to cough twice to interrupt them. Anji, let's talk business first. Only then did Qi Huangji come to his senses. He smiled awkwardly and said, Yes, let's talk business first. This was what happened. 4 days ago, my father completed the handover with the City Lord's mansion, and all the people of the City Lord's mansion withdrew from the profound light cave. My father took a large number of craftsmen, guards, and miners and smoothly took over the profound light cave. But the day before yesterday, we received a message from the Tianfeng County saying that a batch of pets of the Qi family had died on a large scale. The two forces there were very angry and insisted that my father deal with this matter. The other party's background is not small. Our family cannot easily offend them. Moreover, if this matter is not handled properly, it will affect my family's reputation and business. My father had no choice but to go to the Tianfeng County City in person. Before he left, he handed the profound light cave to me and asked me to watch over it carefully. But yesterday, when the craftsmen and a group of miners were mining a vein in the cave, an accident happened. For some reason, the vein exploded, killing more than a dozen craftsmen and more than 300 miners on the spot. That vein also collapsed, causing panic in the profound light cave. The miners can't mine normally. Qi Huangji gave him a brief account of what had happened. After he finished speaking, he looked at Ji Tianqing and said, Brother Tianqing, I've been investigating for a long time, but I still can't find out what happened. I can only ask for your help. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said in a low voice, The City Lord's mansion has occupied the profound light cave for 70 years. They have long regarded that mine as their golden nest. They lost this competition. On the surface, they handed over the profound light cave according to the agreement. But in reality they must hate the Qi family to death. On the surface they won't take revenge on you, but they will secretly do something to make it impossible for the Qi family to smoothly take over the profound light cave. Qi Huangji quickly nodded and said, Yes. I also think so, but I can't find out the reason. Ji Tianqing continued to ask, Are the two forces in Tianfeng Province City related to the City Lord's mansion? How is their relationship with the Bloodsword sect? Qi Huangji frowned and said with some uncertainty, I'm not very clear about this. They shouldn't be related, right? Brother Tianqing, you mean? Bai Long patted his shoulder and said with a smile, Young Master Qi, it seems that the City Lord's mansion is not the only force that wants to deal with the Qi family. Your father just took over the profound light cave, and the business in Tianfeng Province City had problems. Moreover, the two forces insisted that your father must personally deal with it. This is clearly a scheme to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Qi Huangji's face suddenly changed. He nodded in agreement and said, yes. I also thought of this before, but I didn't dare to be sure. After your analysis, I feel that there is an 80% chance that it is. The city lord's mansion may not be able to control the two forces in Tianfeng province city. However, the Blood Sword sect is even more powerful, and it is very likely that they instigated the two forces to secretly plot against our Qi family. After all, the Blood Sword sect wanted to get a share of the pie and take 70% of the Profound Light Cave's production. They came full of confidence and suffered a setback in our Qi family, but reached an agreement with the Lu family. In the end, Mu Yi was beaten half to death by the Tianxing brothers, and the Blood Sword sect's plan failed. Given the Blood Sword sect's style of doing things, they will definitely retaliate. Thinking of this, Qi Huangji was filled with resentment and worry. Brother Tianxing, the Blood Sword sect is one of the top forces in the Divine Kingdom and is very powerful. Now that they have already made a move against the Qi family, what should we do? Ji Tianxing calmly comforted him, don't panic. No matter how powerful the Blood Sword sect is, they can't openly violate the laws of the empire and directly destroy the Qi family, right? That's true. Qi Huangji nodded and said with gritted teeth, it is a peaceful era now. If the Blood Sword sect openly destroys a noble family, they will be punished by the Divine Kingdom. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, then what do you have to worry about? The Blood Sword sect is very powerful, but they can't openly attack the Qi family and can only resort to crafty schemes. As long as we don't panic and fight steadily and solve the problem step by step, we will be able to block their attacks. As long as you do as I say, there won't be any problems. Thus, Ji Tianxing reminded Qi Huangji of a few things and made some arrangements. Qi Huangji nodded repeatedly, and his eyes regained their radiance as he regained his confidence. Then Ji Tianxing got up and walked out. All right, pass down the order first. The most important thing right now is to make a trip to the Profound Light Cave and deal with the matter of that vein. Qi Huangji complied and summoned a guard to pass down the order. Then the three of them stepped out of the study together. After leaving the Qi residence, they rode on 3 white-winged Pegasus and rushed to the setting sun sea in the north. Chapter 28:10. Strictly speaking, Green Mountain City was a coastal city. Hundreds of thousands of miles to the north was the mysterious Sunset Sea. The sea was vast and it was the territory of the sea beasts. It contained a vast amount of resources, natural treasures and minerals, but it was also extremely mysterious and dangerous. At least the ordinary God clan members and commoners would not dare to step into the sea. Only those bloodthirsty adventurers would dare to enter the Sunset Sea to explore and search for treasures. Fortunately, the Cave of Black Light was located close to the shore. Normally, the people of the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom would not go there, and the sea beasts would not go near it. After Ji Tianxing and the other two left Green Mountain City, they went straight to the Cave of Black Light. With the speed of the white-winged Pegasus, they could reach it in 6 hours. On the way, Ji Tianxing thought of something and asked Qi Huangji, when Miss Ning left, did you really warn her? Qi Huangji nodded and said, of course. How could I let her steal from the Qi family? Ji Tianxing asked, what was her reaction? Well, Qi Huangji scratched his head and said in a low voice, she didn't say anything. She was concerned about my health and told me to eat more mind fruit. After that he asked Ji Tianxing in confusion, Brother Tianxing, she never looked at me in the eye before. Why would she take the initiative to show concern for me? Did she change her mind? Or is it because she felt guilty after I warned her that she was trying to poach someone from the Qi family? So she used this method to show her weakness to me? Ji Tianxing could not help but laugh, but he shook his head and said nothing. Bai Long could not help but laugh. Seeing the master and disciple laughing, Qi Huangji was even more confused. Brother Bai Long, what are you laughing at? Bai Long laughed for a while and said, young Master Qi, the mind fruit is a divine fruit. Its main effect is to clear the mind and strengthen the heart and blood. To put it simply, Miss Ning's meaning is, you should be more careful. Oh. Qi Huangji was embarrassed. No matter how slow he was, he understood what Bai Long meant after Bai Long pointed it out. Soon more than 4 hours passed. The 3 white-winged heavenly horses flew past a primitive forest and arrived at the seaside covered with golden sand. On the boundless coastline, there was a vast expanse of golden sand that glistened under the sunlight. Wave after wave, mixed with the unique salty smell of seawater, swept over from the north, never stopping. Directly to the north was the boundless blue sea. The waves were turbulent and white flowers splashed down. All kinds of colorful seabirds flew across the sea in flocks, letting out crisp cries. The three of them sat on the back of the white-winged Pegasus and looked at the sea in the north. Their horizons and moods had broadened a lot. Xianxia vaguely saw a few scattered black spots at the end of the horizon. They seemed to be islands. Qi Huangji pointed at the black dots and took the initiative to introduce them. 10,000 miles away from the shore, there are a few uninhabited islands. A large number of demon beasts used to live there. 900 years ago, when the world was in chaos, those few islands were occupied by tyrannical pirates. It was said that there was a powerful pirate king who unified several groups of pirates and used that place as his lair. At the peak of that group of pirates, there were more than 10,000 of them. However, later on, the whole continent was ruled by the Azura God Emperor, and all the countries obeyed the orders of the God Emperor. The Great Yen Empire obeyed the orders of the God Emperor and eliminated all the surrounding bandits. The Blood Flame Divine Kingdom sent out 100,000 troops to besiege those few islands. They fought for 7 days and 7 nights before they annihilated those pirates. After saying that, Qi Huangji chuckled and shook his head. In my opinion, those pirates were too arrogant. Those few pirate islands were so close to the shore, but they actually treated them as their lair. If they were far away from the shore and retreated to the coastal area 100,000 miles away, the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom might have let them go. Moreover, the Mystic Light Cave is also in that area. In that case, they would have discovered the Mystic Light Cave and plundered a huge amount of wealth. The three of them flew while listening to Qi Huangji's idle chatter. Not long after, they were 100,000 miles away from the shore. The sea here was very deep and there were more birds flying on the sea. On the mirror-like blue sea, islands became even rarer, and there was often only one every tens of thousands of miles. Soon, a dark green island appeared on the sea in front of them. Qi Huangji pointed at the round island and said, "We're here. That's the Mystic Light Cave." Xianxia and the White Dragon looked over and saw that the oval-shaped island was more than 300 miles in radius. The island's terrain was higher. Not only were there a few mountain ranges on the island, but it was also covered with lush forests. On the surface, the island looked ordinary. There were no palaces or buildings and there were no traces of human habitation. No matter who passed by this sea, no one would have thought that there was a hidden treasure trove on this ordinary island. "Let's go in." Qi Huangji led the way, leading Xianxia and the White Dragon to the forest in the middle of the island. There was a mountain range in the middle of the island. The south side was a peak of thousands of feet and the north side was a cliff. However, the cliff was covered by the lush forest. The three white-winged Pegasi drilled into the cliff and flew down. Soon they disappeared in the dark fog. At the same time, a man in a green robe appeared on the sea 20,000 miles away from the Mystic Light Cave. This man was more than 2 meters tall. He had a fair face and a high nose bridge. He had a head full of dark green hair that covered a pair of pointy ears. If Xianxia was here, he would definitely recognize that he was Zhou Xian of the Origin Returning Association. Zhou Xian stood on the sea and looked at the island in the distance with a smile. "I've waited for you for half a month. You've finally left Green Mountain City," Zhou Xian murmured. He took out a communication jade slip and sent it out. Then he dived into the sea again. His body turned into a light blue current and mixed with the endless sea water. His concealment was flawless and perfect. The cliff in the middle of the island was the entrance to the Mystic Light Cave. At the bottom of the cliff, there was an invisible monarch-level formation that covered everything at the bottom of the cliff. From the sky, looking down from the cliff, one could only see a gray fog. Swoosh. The three Pegasi passed through the formation and landed at the bottom of the cliff. As it turned out, the bottom of the cliff was a deep pit with a radius of 20 miles. The deep pit was filled with rocks. There were also more than 30 palaces made of huge stones. The palaces were not luxurious. In fact, they were somewhat crude. Xianxia knew without asking that they were the residences of the craftsmen and miners, as well as the workshops for refining and smelting ores. The dull noises that were echoing non-stop from the various palaces were more than enough to prove everything. On the north and south sides of the deep pit, there were waterways carved into the rock walls. The waterway in the north led the seawater in for washing and smelting ores. The waterway in the south drained the seawater out. On the east and west sides of the deep pit, there were two 30-meter tall gates. That was the entrance to the mine. Chapter 28:11. Ji Tianxing observed for a while in the deep pit and guessed the situation. This deep pit was considered the surface. The ores and metals mined from the underground were all sent here to be refined and purified. Through the entrances on the east and west sides, one could enter the underground mine. The city lord's mansion had operated here for 70 years and had long since formed a complete system of mining, cleansing, and refining. Its work efficiency was very high. Moreover, after the city lord's mansion evacuated, they did not destroy the basic facilities. In this way, the Qi family could quickly take over the Mystic Light Cave. They did not need to prepare too many things to quickly mine the ores. However, these were all superficial things that were not worth the city lord's mansion's meddling. The real problem and the more difficult part should still be in the mine. Let's go and take a look inside the mine. Ji Tianxing looked at Qi Huangji. Qi Huangji quickly led the way and entered the eastern entrance of the mine. After entering the mine, the light became dim. Two mine tunnels, each of which was more than 10 feet wide, meandered down a spacious cave. The mine tunnels were attached to the rock wall. Every 100 steps, there was a gemstone lamp on the rock wall. Ji Tianxing sized up the spacious cave and said, "This cave was excavated by the city lord's mansion in the past few decades, right? It seems that they have mined a lot of divine stones and metals over the years." Qi Huangji quickly nodded and said with righteous indignation, "Yes. On the surface, our Qi family is the richest family in Green Mountain City. But in reality, the city lord's mansion is the real rich family, and they have hidden their wealth well. If not for the Mystic Light Cave, how could they afford to raise 50,000 private soldiers? They even invited a Divine Lord Realm consecrator, hundreds of elite Divine Realm experts, and more than 30 aides." As they spoke, the three quickly went down to the bottom of the cave. The cave of this mine was more than 6,000 feet high. At the bottom of the cave was a plaza with a radius of 50 miles. A large amount of black, brown, and dark gold ores were piled up. There were more than 10 mine tunnels around the plaza, extending in all directions. Many miners, dressed in coarse linen clothes and unkempt faces, were working in the depths of the mine tunnels. Most of them were in charge of mining the ores, while a small number were in charge of transporting them to the plaza. There were also over 100 armored Qi family guards patrolling back and forth in the various tunnels to supervise the workers. When they saw Qi Huangji and Ji Tianxing, everyone bowed to greet them. Bai Long took a few glances and asked with a frown, "Young Master Qi, why are those miners still using carts to transport the ore? I see that the miners are all virtual gods. At the very least they can use spatial rings. How convenient would that be?" Qi Huangji forced a smile and said, "Brother White Dragon, when those miners are working, they are not allowed to bring any divine weapons with them except for mining tools. This was especially true for spatial rings, which could not be worn. Otherwise, if every miner hides ores and resources, how are we going to manage them?" "That's true." The White Dragon nodded in agreement. At this time, Qi Huangji pointed to a tunnel in the corner of the mine and said to Ji Tianxing, "Brother Tianxing, something happened in tunnel number 12. Let's go and take a look." Ji Tianxing turned his head and saw that the tunnel had been sealed off by an array formation. There was even a huge rock blocking the entrance. All right. Therefore he led Qi Huangji and the White Dragon over. The White Dragon grabbed the huge rock at the entrance with one hand and tossed it aside. Qi Huangji quickly cast a spell and undid the seal formation. Then the three of them entered the tunnel and walked toward the mine inside. The tunnel was gourd-shaped with a small opening and a large interior. The mine inside was only 20,000 feet in radius. It was obvious that it had only been opened a few years ago. Under normal circumstances, there would be more than 300 miners working in this mine, digging in all directions. However, after the incident, the entrance to the mine was sealed off. There was no one inside. It was dead silent. The ground was filled with gravel and the air was filled with dust. There were many cracks on the surrounding rock walls and a large number of collapsed boulders. It was obvious that there had been an explosion here and it was very powerful. "White Dragon, clear the gravel and check out the mineral veins underground." Ji Tianxing ordered the White Dragon, pointing at the gravel that covered the ground in the middle of the mine. The White Dragon quickly waved his palm and cast a spell. He used the power of the Earth Rule and cast two dark yellow whirlwinds. Swoosh. The two whirlwinds swept across and quickly cleared the gravel on the ground. A few gullies and a deep pit that was 30 feet wide were exposed on the ground. Several mineral veins were exposed in the deep pit and gully. Colorful ores flickered with light. Ji Tianxing used the divine eye mystic technique and looked through the ground to observe the mineral vein. His gaze slowly moved from south to north. After a full 10 breaths he stopped. They're all divine stones, gems of 6 or 7 attributes, and 4 or 5 divine-level metals. What a pure mineral vein. It's probably one of the best in the entire mystic light cave. Ji Tianxing withdrew his gaze and praised from the bottom of his heart. Qi Huangji quickly nodded and said, "That's right." More than 30 craftsmen came to study this mineral vein and said the same thing. Ji Tianxing continued, "Moreover, this mineral vein is very large. It's 10 miles wide and more than 300 miles long. It extends to the bottom of the sea. What we see in this mine is just the tip of the iceberg." Qi Huangji became more and more excited. He asked in disbelief, "Really? That's great. Just this mineral vein alone, once mined, will be worth at least 10 billion divine stones." But after his excitement he immediately became discouraged. He asked with a depressed face, "But no matter how pure and big the mineral vein is, it's useless. Once the miners start digging, the mineral vein will explode. A mineral vein that can only be looked at and can't be mined, no matter how good it is, it's useless." Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. He stared at the gullies and deep pits and carefully observed them for a while. He frowned and pondered for 10 breaths of time. Suddenly he thought of something and his eyes flashed. "Huangji, if I'm not wrong, when you took over the Mystic Light Cave, there were 2 formations in this mine, right?" Qi Huangji quickly nodded and said excitedly, "Yes. You guessed right, there were indeed 2 formations. However, when the people of the City Lord's mansion left, they dismantled the 2 formations, leaving only the simple formation cores. My father studied them and found that they were all ordinary heaven-level divine formations. They were useless, so he didn't pay much attention to them." Ji Tianxing quickly shook his head and said, "Those 2 formations look simple, but they're actually very important. I speculate that one of them is a wind-removing formation. It drains all the air in the mine and maintains a vacuum state. The other formation should be an ice-type divine formation. It maintains a low temperature in the mine." Qi Huangji frowned doubtfully and asked, "What are the uses of these 2 formations?" Ji Tianxing didn't answer. He thought for a while and continued, "That's right, the City Lord's mansion only dismantled the 2 divine formations. But in fact, when they mine this mineral vein, they will use another kind of material. Earth Fiend Stone. Huangji, I'll set up those 2 divine formations. You go and find the Earth Fiend Stone now. The more the better." Chapter 28:12. Qi Huangji trusted Ji Tianxing very much. But what he heard was like a mountain shrouded in fog. His head was full of fog. "Brother Tianxing, do the 2 formations and the Earth Fiend Stone you mentioned have anything to do with mining?" Ji Tianxing smiled. "Of course they have something to do with it. And we can't do without these 3 things." Qi Huangji scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. "I still don't understand. Can you explain it to me?" Before Ji Tianxing could answer, Bai Long said, "Young Master Qi, there's a lot of knowledge in this. It's normal that you don't understand. Think about it, there are 6 to 7 types of God's stones and 4 to 5 types of metals in the mine. Each type of God's stone and metal contains a different amount of God's power. Plus, there's a special force underground. Wouldn't it be very complicated if they were mixed together?" Qi Huangji nodded. "It's quite complicated. So this is the cause of the explosion?" Bai Long shook his head. "The nature of the God's power in the mine is very complicated. But it has been growing underground for tens of thousands of years. In a special environment it can still be relatively stable. So if you don't touch this mine it won't explode. But when miners mine it and cut the God's stones and metals, it will cause the God's power to become chaotic and cause an explosion. As for the specific cause of the explosion, you won't understand even if I tell you. In my words, it's called a conflict of relative forces. The atomic structure is destroyed, and the mixing of different elements leads to a chemical reaction, which causes a violent explosion." Qi Huangji was about to understand the cause. But after hearing Bai Long's explanation he was even more confused. Ji Tianxing glanced at Bai Long and explained to Qi Huangji, "Don't listen to his nonsense. To put it simply, the conflict of God's power caused the explosion. Only by setting up 2 God formations, changing the environment of the mine, and sprinkling a large amount of earth fiend stone in the mine. Can the mining be stable? Qi Huangji was suddenly enlightened. He quickly gave Ji Tianqing a thumbs up and praised him sincerely. Brother Tianqing, you are indeed omniscient and knowledgeable. Because of this, the Qi family's deacons and hundreds of craftsmen are so anxious that their hair is turning white. After that, he shouted with a face full of resentment, those bastards from the city lord's mansion are actually so insidious. I will remember this grudge. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, don't be impulsive. Have you forgotten what I told you before? Qi Huangji recalled what Ji Tianqing had told him before he left the Qi estate, and only then did he suppress his anger. Ji Tianqing continued, I reckon that when the city lord's mansion was mining this vein, there was more than one explosion. Many people must have died. However, the city lord's mansion was filled with talents. After spending a lot of time and effort, they still found a solution. However, they did not expect that the profound light cave would be snatched away by the Qi clan. Dissatisfied, they purposely dismantled the two formations and took out the earth fiend stones. They were the ones who came up with the method of mining this mine. Why would they tell the Qi clan? That makes sense. Qi Huangji nodded and said, in that case, the city lord's mansion didn't deliberately frame the Qi family. They just didn't want the Qi family to mine smoothly, so they hid a lot of things. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, of course. They spent a lot of time and effort to come up with the mining secret. How could they give it to the Qi family? Although the profound light cave is a treasure trove, you need to have the ability to excavate it. Qi Huangji nodded and turned to leave. Okay, you wait here. I'll go home and get the earth fiend stones. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, go and come back quickly. Qi Huangji waved goodbye and left the mine. Then he quickly left the profound light cave and flew back on the white-winged Pegasus. Ji Tianqing and White Dragon stayed in the mine. White Dragon, you set up the two divine formations. I'll check the other mines and see if there are any problems. Ji Tianqing handed the task to White Dragon and turned to leave. White Dragon guessed that he had another purpose, so he didn't ask and began to set up the divine formations. Ji Tianqing left the number 12 mine and began to check the number 11 mine. This mine was bigger and had been excavated for a long time. However, the mineral veins inside were slightly smaller and their grades were not that high. More than 300 miners, under the supervision of 10 guards, were sweating profusely as they worked. Ji Tianqing walked around in the mine, then walked to a corner of the mine and sat down on the colorful, sparkling ore vein. Then he reached out his right palm and pressed it on the mine. He activated the devouring divine ability and a black vortex appeared in his palm. He began to absorb the power of the mine. This mine was more than 200 miles long and contained billions of divine stones and metals. It was full of divine power. The black vortex sucked, and the 5-colored divine power in the mine gushed out and entered the heaven-mending orb. The heaven-mending orb flashed with white light and quickly purified the 5-colored divine power and removed the impurities. Half of the purified divine power went to the heaven-mending orb and half to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's strength began to skyrocket. He felt refreshed and refreshed. He was in a good mood. The guards in the mine all knew that he was the Qi family's consecrator. They admired and respected him. Even when the guards saw him, they thought that he was inspecting the mine. They did not think much and did not dare to disturb him. A full 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing finally withdrew his right palm and stopped devouring. At this time his strength had doubled. This was comparable to the effect of spending more than 20 million divine stones during his 8 days in seclusion. The speed of increasing his strength was too fast. It was inconceivably fast, heaven-defying. However, Ji Tianqing did not continue to devour, in case the mine's power was exhausted and others found out something was wrong. I have finished my inspection. There is no problem with this mine. Everyone, don't worry about it. After saying this, Ji Tianqing calmly left the mine. The miners and guards had been on tenterhooks because of the explosion in the number 12 mine. Now that they heard Ji Tianqing's words, everyone felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders, and they were completely at ease. Then Ji Tianqing entered the number 10 mine and secretly devoured the power of the mine in the name of inspecting the mine. Qi Huangji rode on the white-winged Pegasus and flew across the sea toward Qingshan City happily. Ji Tianqing had solved the problem that gave him a headache so quickly. He was happy and proud. He even felt a little smug. I have a good eye for heroes. I let young Master Tianqing stay. If he can stay in the Qi family will prosper. Not to mention becoming the richest man in Qingshan City, it will be easy to destroy the city governor's mansion and rule Qingshan City. Just as he was fantasizing, a green figure suddenly appeared in the sky above the sea in front of him. Swoosh! A young man in a green robe with dark green hair stopped Qi Huangji. Young Master Qi, please wait. I need to borrow you. Chapter 28:13. Qi Huangji was still indulging in his fantasy. Suddenly he saw a green-robed man standing in his way and stopped in his tracks. Who are you? If I know you? Qi Huangji frowned as he glared at the green-robed man. The green-robed man was none other than Zhu Qingqing. He smiled and said, "Of course you don't know me, young Master Qi. But I know you." Qi Huangji immediately raised his guard. He drew his sword and asked, "What are you trying to do? This is Green Mountain City's territory. If you want to rob me, you better give up." Zhu Qingqing maintained his smile and said calmly, "You must be joking, young Master Qi. Although the Qi family is rich, I don't care about your wealth. I'm waiting for you here because I need to borrow you. As long as you cooperate, I can guarantee your safety." "Borrow me?" Qi Huangji raised his eyebrows and laughed. Is there something wrong with your head? Is it because your wife can't have children and you want to borrow my seed? Let me tell you, no way. The Qi family's bloodline is very noble. Your wife has no right to enjoy it." No matter how good Zhu Qingqing's temper was, his face darkened when he heard what Qi Huangji said. "Young Master Qi, I've tried my best, but you're asking for trouble. Don't blame me for being rude." As he spoke, Zhu Qingqing took out a green wooden compass and was about to attack. Qi Huangji sneered disdainfully. "A mere level 8 heavenly god dares to attack me? Come at me, I'll make you look for your teeth on the ground. I'll let you know why the sea is so blue." "How dare you?" Zhu Qingqing shouted. He made a hand seal and controlled the compass to attack Qi Huangji. At this moment, a figure appeared in the sky behind Qi Huangji. It was a burly man in a black robe with a cloak and a mask. He appeared without a sound and instantly released an invisible spiritual shockwave, which hit Qi Huangji. Boom! A muffled sound exploded in the spiritual shockwave. Qi Huangji's godhead was hit hard. He blacked out and his consciousness blurred. Before he lost consciousness, he glared at Zhu Qingqing and cursed, "You despicable." After saying that, he closed his eyes and fainted. The white-winged Pegasus beneath him was also stunned by the black-robed man. It fell from the sky and smashed into the sea. Shua! The black-robed man waved his hand and struck out a giant golden palm, grabbing the white-winged Pegasus and Qi Huangji. The giant palm wrapped around the white-winged Pegasus and Qi Huangji, shrinking into a fist-sized ball of light and flying back into the black-robed man's hand. "Qingqing, you talk too much." The black-robed man glanced at Zhu Qingqing and spoke in an indifferent tone. Zhu Qingqing bowed and said, "Don't be angry, Vice President. This is my strategy to lower Qi Huangji's guard. He's just a useless young master." The Vice President said coldly, "Let's go." Afterwards, the two of them flew through the sky like streaks of light, quickly leaving the sea of setting Sunday. After an unknown period of time, Qi Huangji slowly woke up. He opened his eyes and saw the scene in front of him. This was a dark cave, very primitive and crude. There were 2 moonstones on the walls of the cave, shining with a weak silver light. He was nailed to the rock wall, and there was a golden talisman on his limbs and forehead. Not only could he not move his body, but his godhead was also sealed, and he could not use his divine power or soul. He opened his eyes wide and looked into the cave, and saw a hazy shadow on a millstone. At this moment, Zhu Qingqing walked out of the darkness and came to him. "Young Master Qi, I won't waste time with you. Let's make a deal." Qi Huangji glared at her and said, "Bastard, is this how you make a deal with people? Our Qi family has always been about equality and willingness when doing business. First, undo the seal." "Haha," Zhu Qingqing sneered. "Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll make it clear. Do as I say and send a message to Tianxing and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I'll chop you into pieces and tear you to shreds." "Young Master Tianxing?" Qi Huangji frowned and his expression darkened. "You have a deep grudge with him? You want to lure him here and ambush him?" Zhu Qingqing shook her head and said, "There is no grudge between us. He used me and betrayed us. I have to ask him to come here and apologize to our leader." Qi Huangji heard the meaning behind her words and sneered, Oh, so you're an organization. You kidnapped me and lured Tianqing here just to apologize to your leader? Is it really that simple? Of course, Zhu Qingqing answered without changing her expression. Bah! Qi Huangji spat and sneered. You despicable bastard, I'll be a fool if I believe you. Zhu Qingqing's face darkened and she shouted, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I'll give you one last chance, send a message to Ji Tianqing and ask him to come here. Otherwise I'll cut off your flesh piece by piece. As she spoke, Zhu Qingqing took out a small silver knife and pressed it against Qi Huangji's crotch. Qi Huangji instinctively clamped his crotch and shouted, Kid, since you know that I'm the young master of the Qi family, you should know the consequences. Let me go now and I'll pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, if I lose a single hair, you'll have to bear the Qi family's wrath. Zhu Qingqing wanted to say something else. At this moment, the black shadow on the millstone waved his hand and shot out 3 rays of golden light. Whoosh! The golden light struck like a knife and cut off 2 of Qi Huangji's ears. The 3rd ray of golden light floated in front of him and aimed at his crotch. The heart-wrenching pain made Qi Huangji's face pale, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The 3rd beam of golden light emitted a sharp aura, causing his entire body to turn cold, and a chill ran down his spine. The vice president's cold voice came from the darkness. You have no right to bargain. If you say another word, I'll end your bloodline. Qi Huangji fell silent. His heart was full of struggle and suffering. After hesitating for a long time, he said bitterly, Fine, you're awesome. I'll remember this. Seeing that he had finally compromised, Zhu Qingqing released a seal and allowed him to use his divine sense. Young Master Qi, this is the 5-Cloud Mountain. Let him come alone. If he dares to bring another person, I'll cut off a piece of your flesh. Qi Huangji had no choice but to take out a communication jade slip from his spatial ring and send a message to Ji Tianqing. Young Master Tianqing, I'm at the 5-Cloud Mountain. Please come over as soon as possible. I have something important to discuss with you. Dunsho. After he finished speaking, Zhu Qingqing took the communication jade slip away and asked in a low voice, It's just a message, not a letter. Why do you need to add Dunsho? Qi Huangji said contemptuously, What does an ignorant brute like you know? I'm a noble. Whether it's a letter or a message, it has to be cultured. Zhu Qingqing glanced at him and hesitated for a moment before sending out the communication jade slip. Chapter 28:14. Inside the profound light cave. 6 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing had completed the task Bai Long gave him. 2 kinds of divine arrays had been set up in Mine 12. Once Qi Huangji got the Earth Fiend Stone, he could mine normally. Ji Tianqing also checked the 3 mines one after another. Mine 11, 10 and 9 had no problems and could be mined normally. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing devoured all 3 mineral veins. The energy he swallowed from each vein was not too much, just enough to double his strength. In this way, the guards and miners would not find any clues. Ji Tianqing's strength also increased by about 3 times. Adding the results of his previous closed-door cultivation, his strength had increased by 4 times. He was not far from the 8th level of the Celestial God Realm. In another 2 hours he could check another vein and increase his strength by 5 times and try to break through to the 8th level. But at this moment, swoosh! A ray of divine light flew in from outside the cave and stopped in front of him. The divine light dissipated and a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianqing reached out to pick up the jade slip and read the information in it with his divine sense. A moment later he frowned and his face became gloomy. At this moment Bai Long came to his side. Seeing his abnormal expression, Bai Long asked, Master, who sent the communication jade slip? What happened? Ji Tianqing threw the jade slip to him and said calmly, Qi Huangji sent it. He's in trouble and is trapped in 5 Clouds Mountain. He's waiting for me to save him. Bai Long read the contents of the jade slip and asked doubtfully, There's only one sentence here. How do you know he's in trouble and needs you to save him? Ji Tianqing explained, From here to Green Mountain City he can just go south, but 5 Clouds Mountain is southeast. If there's no accident, why would he take a detour to 5 Clouds Mountain? Moreover, before leaving the Qi residence, I guessed that the City Lord's residence and Blood Sword sect would deal with the Qi family. The other party is very likely to attack Qi Huangji, so I gave him a secret signal. Bai Long was enlightened and said, The secret signal you're talking about is stop head? Ji Tianxing nodded. White Dragon smiled and said, "Brilliant." Usually these two words would be used at the end of a letter. A rich young master like Qi Huangji would definitely not use these two words. He would not use these two words. Once he uses it, it means that he has been plotted against. That's right. Ji Tianxing nodded again. The White Dragon sneered, "Are they that impatient? I want to see if it's someone from the Blood Sword sect or the City Lord's mansion. Master, please wait for a moment. I will gather the guards and bring them to save Qi Huangji." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and dissuaded him, "There's no need to bring guards. It'll be troublesome if there are too many people. Just come with me." White Dragon understood what he meant and nodded in agreement. Then the master and disciple quickly left the profound light cave. Outside the cave, Ji Tianxing kept the White Dragon in the divine pagoda. He rode the white-winged heavenly horse alone, crossing the ocean surface as fast as lightning, flying towards 5 Sunset Mountain. The sun was setting and the light was dim. 5 Sunset Mountain was located in a primitive forest, and it was 3,000 meters tall. More than 20 heavenly god realm experts were hiding at the peak and halfway up the mountain. These people were the backbone of the Origin Returning Association. They hid very well, watching the northern sky closely, waiting for prey to take the bait. Inside the mountain in a dark cave, the vice president was still hiding in the darkness, sitting on a millstone and waiting quietly. Zhu Qingqing stared at Qi Huangji and waited patiently. After a long silence, Qi Huangji stared at Zhu Qingqing and asked, "Kid, I've already sent a message to young Master Tianxing. Can you move the knife away?" The knife in Zhu Qingqing's hand was still pointed at his crotch, making him feel very insecure. As expected of a hedonistic son. You actually betrayed the benefactor of the Qi family for a filthy seed of evil. Zhu Qingqing sneered disdainfully and silently put away the knife. Qi Huangji was both embarrassed and angry. He cursed, "You keep pointing a knife at my brother. Are you jealous that my brother is older than you? No. You're so weird, and you even said something about a seed of evil. I get it. You definitely don't have a little brother. You've been castrated." Qi Huangji stared at Zhu Qingqing with shining eyes as if he had discovered a new continent. There was contempt and disdain in his eyes as well as pity. "You." Zhu Qingqing was so angry that her face turned red. He wanted to castrate him. At this moment, a golden light flew out from the darkness and nailed Qi Huangji's shoulder. The golden dagger disappeared, leaving a bloody hole in his shoulder. Blood kept flowing out. Qi Huangji gritted his teeth in pain and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He knew that this was a warning from the black-robed man. He was so angry that he wanted to kill him, but he could only suppress it. After all, a wise man knew when to retreat. He had already sworn in his heart that after this was over, he would tear the man into pieces and burn his bones to ashes. After a moment of silence, he looked at Zhu Qingqing expressionlessly and asked, "Kid, although young Master Tianxing has become a guest of the Qi family, he has just arrived in Qingshan City. I know nothing about his identity and background. Since you have a grudge against him, can you tell me who he is?" Zhu Qingqing sneered, "You want to get information from me? You're too naive." Qi Huangji frowned and said, "I've already betrayed him. When he comes here and gets ambushed, he will definitely break with me. Tell me his background. If he doesn't have a proper background, the Qi clan will sever all ties with him." Zhu Qingqing glanced at him and sneered contemptuously, "Your Qi family is really cold-blooded. Burning the bridge after crossing the river." Qi Huangji put on a fake smile and said, "Of course a merchant family has to avoid harm." Zhu Qingqing nodded and said, "Tianxing is not a Protoss. He was originally..." Before he could finish, the vice president in the darkness scolded him, "Why are you talking nonsense with him?" Zhu Qingqing's body stiffened and she quickly stopped talking. Qi Huangji saw her silence and hurriedly urged, "Go on. What was Tianxing's original identity?" Zhu Qingqing did not dare to say more and turned her head to look elsewhere. At this time, a figure rushed into the cave and flew to the millstone. It was a young Protoss. He bowed to the black-robed man and reported, "Sir, the target is alone and is rushing to Mount Wuxia. He's 30,000 miles away." The black-robed man waved his hand and the young Protoss hurriedly retreated. "Let's go and meet that kid." The black-robed man walked out of the cave and said indifferently. Zhu Qingqing hurriedly grabbed Qi Huangji and left the cave. After a while, the three of them flew to the peak of Mount Wuxia and stood on a huge black rock. At the same time, a white-winged Pegasus galloped from the north and landed in the forest above the mountain peak. There was indeed only one person on the Pegasus' back. It was Ji Tianqing in a white robe. Seeing this scene, the vice president and Zhu Qingqing both revealed a sinister smile. Qi Huangji's heart was in his mouth. He thought anxiously, "Brother Tianqing, I did as you said. Why did you come alone? These people are very strong. You can't even protect yourself, let alone save me." End of chapter. Chapter 28:15. The white-winged Pegasus stopped in the sky above the forest. Ji Tianqing sat on the back of the Pegasus, looking down at the peak of 5 Sunset Mountain. There was a huge black rock at the peak of the mountain, and there were 3 people standing on it. The person in front was wearing a black robe and a cloak covering his face. The other person was a young man in a green robe. Ji Tianqing recognized her immediately. He was Zhu Qingqing. As for the third person, it was the unlucky Qi Huangji. There was a curse on his body and his power was sealed. He was held in Zhu Qingqing's hand. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, then he sneered. Haha. People are really not what they used to be. I knew that you didn't have good intentions when you got close to me. But I didn't expect you to be so crazy. Ji Tianqing's tone was cold and there was a murderous look in his eyes. He had always been wary of Zhu Qingqing and the Origin Returning Association. Because of this, he rejected Zhu Qingqing's invitation and didn't join the Origin Returning Association. Instead, he joined the unfamiliar Green Mountain City. He believed that in the cruel and dangerous God world, it was better to rely on oneself than on others. The only interaction he had with Zhu Qingqing was that she gave him a household registration card. But after he joined the Qi family and became a consecrator, he threw away the card. Because he didn't want to have anything to do with the Origin Returning Association. But he didn't expect Zhu Qingqing to kidnap Qi Huangji and force him to come to 5 Sunset Mountain. That was too despicable. Zhu Qingqing was still smiling. She said to Ji Tianqing, "Brother Tianqing, you misunderstood me. Actually, at the beginning I did want to help you. But you were too arrogant. Not only did you reject my invitation, you even entered Green Mountain City and got close to the Qi family. You have a top-secret treasure, but you didn't want to join us. This made us very sad. We had no choice but to use this method to talk to you face to face." Ji Tianqing frowned. His eyes were cold. He could tell that the top-secret treasure Zhu Qingqing was talking about was the Heavenly Dao opportunity. After all, Zhu Qingqing had seen him walk out of the Ascension Pool and kill Lin Wuji with her own eyes. How could an ascender who had just ascended to the God realm be so powerful if he hadn't obtained the Heavenly Dao's opportunity? What's more, Ji Tianqing had also become a consecrator of the Qi family and helped the Qi family obtain the Profound Light Cave. This made Zhu Qingqing and the Origin Returning Association even more certain about this matter. Ji Tianqing nodded and sneered, "Zhu Qingqing. You guys are clearly the ones who covet my abilities and divine arts. You guys want to snatch them from me after failing to rope me in. Yet you guys are being so hypocritical. Your Origin Returning Association is truly despicable to the extreme." Qi Huangji's pupils constricted when he heard the words Origin Returning Association. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Guiyuan Association? Was it the force formed by many gods and ascenders that fought against the divine nation? Humph. Damn Guiyuan Association, I'll remember you. Just you wait. As long as I return to Qingshan City, I will use all means to destroy the Guiyuan Association. Qi Huangji was very smart. He didn't say these words out loud and only cursed angrily in his heart. At the same time, he made up his mind to fight to the death with the Origin Returning Association. At the same time, the black-robed man in a cloak ordered in a low voice, "Zhu Qingqing, don't waste your breath with him. It's time to do something." Zhu Qingqing acknowledged the order and looked coldly at Ji Tianqing. She said, "Brother Tianqing, I won't say anything else. Since you are here, if you don't hand over the top-secret treasure, don't think of leaving alive. You are a smart person and should know what to do." As soon as he finished speaking, more than 20 figures appeared around the mountain peak and flew into the sky. They were the 24 experts of the Origin Returning Association. They were all wearing godly armor and holding sabers as Kenshin soldiers. They spread out and surrounded the sky within a 50-kilometer radius. Everyone was ready to attack and locked onto Ji Tianqing's aura. Ji Tianqing had no intention of making a move. He frowned and asked, Zhu Qingqing, are you out of your mind? My top secret treasure has already fused with my godhead. How can I hand it over? Zhu Qingqing was stunned for a moment and was a little troubled. Indeed, the so-called top secret treasure was a heavenly Dao opportunity. It was some kind of special divine power or divine ability law. It wasn't the real thing, so how could she hand it over? The black-robed man said in a cold tone, "You can either join us and be ordered by us, or I will kill you and refine your godhead." Ji Tianxing glanced at him and asked, "If I'm not wrong, this second-level divine lord expert should be your vice president, right?" The vice president asked in a low voice, "Since you have guessed my identity, you should understand that killing you is as easy as flipping my hand." That's true. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a calm tone, "Since I will definitely die, then I will choose the first option and join the Origin Returning Association." Zhu Qingqing immediately heaved a sigh of relief, a cold smile on her lips. The vice president said in a low voice, "At least you are sensible. However, I don't believe you. Want to join us? Seal your divine power now. Wait for me to implant the soul-shifting crystal into your godhead. Only then will you be considered a member." Finished talking, the vice president flipped his palm. A dark red crystal appeared in his palm. That was a rhombus-shaped divine crystal. It emitted cold and mysterious energy fluctuations and had the effect of controlling one's mind. Once Ji Tianxing's godhead was implanted with this soul-shifting crystal, he would become the Origin Returning Association's puppet. At that time, his divine soul and consciousness would be controlled by the Origin Returning Association. Even if the Origin Returning Association wanted him to kill his wife and son, he could only carry out the order. In short, something like the soul-shifting crystal was very terrifying and very vicious. Ji Tianxing glanced at the soul-shifting crystal, narrowed his eyes and said with a cold smile, "All right, I can agree to it, but I have a condition. This is a grudge between me and the Origin Returning Association. It has nothing to do with the Qi family's young master. Let him go now and allow him to escape alone." Zhu Qingqing immediately interrupted him and said with a cold smile, "No way. You want him to escape from here and inform the Qi family?" The vice president also said in a low voice, "Kid, don't even think of playing tricks." Ji Tianxing said with an indifferent expression, "Since you don't agree, then let's not talk about it anymore? Alright, then let's have a big fight. Even if I die here, I will drag a few of you down with me. Also, I will self-detonate my godhead. I will definitely not let you get that treasure. At that time you will have lost so many elites for nothing. You will also become the Qi family's mortal enemy. Qi Huangji is the only son of the Qi family's patriarch. If he dies, the Qi family will definitely destroy the Origin Returning Association at all costs. You can imagine the consequences yourself." Hearing this, Zhu Qingqing's face immediately darkened. His eyes flashed with a cold light. He hesitated for a moment, then transmitted his voice to the vice president. "Vice President, our goal is the heavenly Dao opportunity. There is no need to become the Qi family's mortal enemy." Chapter 28:16. The vice president had finally agreed. Ji Tianxing smiled and praised, "You're smart, vice president. You know what's more important." The vice president was furious, but he remained silent. Zhu Qingqing glared at Ji Tianxing before releasing the two seals on Qi Huangji's body, allowing him to move again. Of course, Qi Huangji's divine power and consciousness were still sealed. He couldn't use any secret techniques, so he could only walk and run like a mortal. "Get lost." Zhu Qingqing kicked Qi Huangji's back and cursed angrily. Qi Huangji stumbled and fell to the ground. He rolled a dozen times on the grass before stopping. He glared at Zhu Qingqing viciously, then turned to Ji Tianxing and yelled, "Brother Tianxing, I'm sorry, I'm the one who got you into trouble. I thought you could create a miracle and save me, so I sent you a message. If I had known this would happen, I would never have sent you a message." Qi Huangji's voice was sobbing, full of self-blame and guilt. Before leaving the Qi residence, Ji Tianxing had told him a few things. One of them was the secret signal they had agreed on. Another thing was that if he was kidnapped by a certain force, he had to prioritize his own life. He had to follow the other party's instructions. He couldn't make blind sacrifices. Therefore, after being kidnapped, Qi Huangji remained calm and collected. He thought to himself, "Young Master Tianxing is so wise and powerful. Is there anything young Master Tianxing can't do?" Therefore, he followed Zhu Qingqing's instructions and sent a message to Ji Tianxing, adding a secret signal. He thought that Ji Tianxing would understand his meaning and think of a way to save him. At the very least he would bring a large group of Qi family experts to Five Cloud Mountain to save him. However, Ji Tianxing went to Five Cloud Mountain alone. Not only did he not bring the Qi family experts, but he was also surrounded by the Gui Yuan Association. In order to save his life, Ji Tianxing had to be implanted with a soul crystal and become a puppet of the Gui Yuan Association. At the thought of this, Qi Huangji was filled with despair. He was both touched and regretful. Zhu Qingcheng's face was filled with disdain as she laughed coldly. "Young Master Qi, you're really indulging in fantasy. We've already set up an ambush here. Tianxing is here to die. What kind of miracle can he create? Hurry up and scram. Otherwise, if anything happens, I'll kill you as well." Qi Huangji glared at him and cursed. "Your name is Zhu Qingcheng, right? King Birdless Pervert, I will remember you. Just you wait. If you dare to kill Brother Tianxing, I will burn your bones and scatter your ashes even if I have to exhaust all my wealth." Zhu Qingcheng was furious. She raised her hand to cast a spell and beat Qi Huangji up. At this moment Ji Tianxing, who was in the sky, shouted sternly, "Qi Anji, what are you still standing there for? I sacrificed myself to save your life, so why aren't you leaving this place? Get lost. Disappear from my sight at once." Zhu Qingcheng frowned. She finally suppressed her anger and withdrew her hand. Qi Huangji was stunned for a moment. Suddenly he understood something. He quickly turned and ran down the mountain. As he ran he wailed and shouted, "Brother Tianxing, I'm sorry. Thank you for saving my life. I will remember your kindness forever." Although he could not use his divine power, he was a level 9 god. His physique was very strong. He ran desperately, as fast as an arrow leaving the bow. In a few breaths' time he rushed down the Five Clouds Mountain and entered the vast forest. In just a short while he had disappeared. The mountain peak was silent. After a full quarter of an hour, Qi Huangji had run for about 200 miles. At this moment the vice president said in a deep voice, "Boy, we have kept our promise and let Qi Huangji leave. Now it's time for you to fulfill your promise. Seal your divine power and take my soul-shifting crystal." After that, the vice president held the soul-shifting crystal in his hand and stepped into the sky, walking toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing looked at him and suddenly revealed a mocking sneer. He shook his head lightly and said, "Sai, I didn't think that someone would be so stupid as to believe that the enemy would keep their promise." The vice president's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Zhu Qingcheng's expression also changed abruptly. She glared at Ji Tianxing and shouted coldly, "What do you mean?" Ji Tianxing looked at her sympathetically and said with a smile, "Don't you understand? I was lying to you. Who would want to join your stupid association? You have been fooled. Do you understand now?" Zhu Qingcheng was so angry that she laughed. She pointed at him and said, "Boy, you are courting death." The vice president was also furious. He sneered and said, "I really don't understand. You are already in a tight encirclement. Where did you find the courage to resist?" Ji Tianxing stretched out his right hand and summoned the Sword of Burial of Heaven. He sneered and said, "You think you can kill me with just this bunch of useless people? Only you, a monarch god, can pose a threat to me. It's just a little troublesome." Seeing him so confident and arrogant, the vice president put away the soul-shifting crystal and shouted coldly, "Boy, since you insist on courting death, I will fulfill your wish." As his voice fell, the vice president's figure flashed and teleported in front of Ji Tianxing. He raised his palms and slapped out fiercely. 2 dazzling 5-colored divine lights, carrying the power of 5 laws, slammed towards Ji Tianxing. However, Ji Tianxing had already teleported tens of thousands of feet away and dodged in advance. Bam! With a deafening sound, the 2 divine lights from the vice president hit the white-winged Pegasus fiercely. The poor white-winged Pegasus was directly smashed into pieces, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. At the same time, Ji Tianxing appeared behind Zhu Qingcheng and waved his sword with all his strength, creating sword lights that filled the sky. "Despicable person, die!" Swish swish swish. More than 30 dazzling golden sword lights, carrying the power of 12 laws, enveloped Zhu Qingcheng's figure. Zhu Qingcheng thought that Ji Tianxing wouldn't even be able to withstand one attack and would be instantly killed by the vice president. He didn't think that Ji Tianxing would attack him. As a result, his reaction was one step slower. When he wanted to dodge, the sword lights had already reached him and he had nowhere to run. At this critical moment he could only use all his strength to activate the divine power shield to protect himself. Bam 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 bam. In the next moment the 36 dazzling sword lights all hit Zhu Qingcheng. A deafening sound immediately exploded in the sky. Zhu Qingcheng's divine power shield couldn't withstand a single blow and was shattered into pieces. He was also hit by more than 30 sword lights. Blood splattered all over his body. His left arm was cut off and flew into the sky. With a shrill scream, Zhu Qingcheng flew out in a sorry state, her clothes in tatters. She crashed into the experts of the Origin Association. At this moment, in the sky around the 5-cloud mountain, 6 dazzling divine lights suddenly lit up. They were 2 peerless beauties. One was a delicate little girl and the other was a demonic young man with silver hair. There was also a black dragon that was 100 miles long and a heavenly fox that was as large as a mountain. They were Yun Yao, Jiku, Bai Long and the others. They appeared out of nowhere and attacked the elites of the Origin Returning Association as fast as lightning. Chapter 28:17. Kill. Die. Despicable scum, die. Yun Yao's white dress fluttered in the wind. She held the 2 source stone swords and instantly charged behind the 2 Origin Society elites. She waved her swords and slashed out hundreds of starry sword lights. It was like a bright moon in the sky. The 2 Origin Society elites were not prepared for this at all. They were immediately sent flying by the sword lights. Their bodies were covered in blood as they howled in pain. Jiku was wearing a red dress. Her red hair fluttered in the wind. She held the black source stone divine spear in her hand. She was like a flame. She attacked the 2 Origin Society elites from behind. She waved her divine spear and shot out 5-colored divine flames. Bang! Bang! The 5-colored divine flames that could burn the sky and destroy the world instantly enveloped the 2 elites. The 2 of them were still a little dazed. They instinctively tried to block it, but they were sent flying. Blood spurted out of their orifices and their bodies were charred black. On the other side, Bai Long and Ji Wushuang also launched their attacks. They used their ultimate skills and heavily injured the 5 Origin Association experts until they vomited blood. Qian Yu and Black Dragon's attacks were even more shocking. They spat out dragon breath divine flames and extremely cold light blades that covered the sky. They enveloped more than a dozen Origin Society elites. Although those elites worked together to block the attacks, they were not severely injured. But they were forced into a fluster and all of them suffered either light or heavy injuries. In the blink of an eye, Yun Yao, Jiku, and the others tore open a few gaps in the Origin Society's encirclement. Seeing this, the vice president's body shook. Anger surged in his chest. He saw through it. Ji Tianxing had never thought of compromising. He would never join the Origin Society. He didn't come alone at all. He had already brought helpers and was lying in ambush around 5-Cloud Mountain. When the time was right, his helpers launched a surprise attack and severely injured more than a dozen Origin Society elites. Zhu Qingcheng did not care about her injuries. She glared at Ji Tianxing and cursed, "You bastard! You are really despicable." Ji Tianxing looked at him sympathetically and sneered, "Seeing how stupid you are, I really feel bad if I don't trick you once." Zhu Qingcheng was even more embarrassed. She shouted, "How did you do it? More than 20 of our experts have been lying in ambush around 5-Cloud Mountain, monitoring the situation. They clearly saw you come alone. How could you have a helper?" Ji Tianxing couldn't help but sigh, "Alas. With your intelligence you still want to be a bad guy? Sorry for troubling you. Tens of thousands of li away, my companions concealed their tracks and auras, quietly approaching 5-Cloud Mountain. And I swaggered in here to attract your attention. As for those experts you arranged, they're merely 5th or 6th level celestial deity realm. How can we possibly detect their auras?" Only then did Zhu Qingcheng realize the reason. She became even angrier and spat out a mouthful of blood. "You're despicable." Bai Long could not stand it anymore and said with a look of disdain, "Hey, Green Tortoise, can't you change your lines? I'm sick of hearing it." Zhu Qingcheng became even angrier until her entire body trembled. She raised her treasure sword and was about to fight Bai Long to the death. At this time the vice president shouted coldly, "Enough." Zhu Qingcheng's footsteps paused, stopping obediently. The vice president's aura was gloomy. His entire body emitted an invisible divine might, enveloping a radius of several hundred li. His gaze was sharp as he stared at Ji Tianqing. He said with a cold smile, "Brat, you're happy too early. Even if your scheme succeeded, so what if you injured our experts? The sovereign can still kill all of you, then seize your divine spark." Ji Tianqing smiled faintly and said, "I admire your courage very much, but your dream is unrealistic." "Arrogant!" the vice president shouted angrily. He did not waste words with him anymore, raising both fists and smashing over. Fist of Annihilation. In an instant, two mountain-sized fist lights spun at extreme speed like vortexes, blasting toward Ji Tianqing head-on. The dazzling five-colored fist lights burst forth with terrifying devouring power. Any living being that was enveloped by the fist aura would be ground into dust. There was no way to escape. Ji Tianqing also used all his strength and attacked with two mountain-sized dragon and elephant phantoms. Boom! In a deafening sound, the four fist lights clashed, creating a destructive shockwave that swept in all directions. Luckily, Yun Yao and Ji Ku had retreated a few hundred li away in advance. Zhu Qingqing and the people of the Gui Yuan Association did not dare to interfere with the vice president's battle, so they retreated 300 li away. Even so, when the five-colored shockwave swept over, a dozen people were still sent flying. These experts of the Gui Yuan Association were already quite injured. After being hit by the shockwave, they spat out blood again and their injuries became even worse. Yun Yao and Ji Ku relied on the protection of the source stones, so they were not injured. After the shockwave passed, they waved their weapons again and attacked Zhu Qingqing and the experts of the Gui Yuan Association. Swish swish swish. Swish 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 swish. Boom, 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 boom. Everyone used all kinds of divine powers and secret arts and countless trump cards. Dazzling five-colored divine light and all kinds of strange divine powers covered a few thousand li of the sky. The divine powers of both sides clashed, creating earth-shattering sounds that shook the world. In an instant, the mountains and forests within a radius of 8,000 li were destroyed and turned into ruins. Even though the experts of the Gui Yuan Association had the advantage of numbers, in terms of strength they were not weaker than Ji Ku and Yun Yao. However, the experts of the Gui Yuan Association were all injured and could not use their full strength. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were all peerless geniuses that were 1 in 10,000. Their true combat power was 3 levels higher than their cultivation level. Also, they had powerful source stones and divine weapons and mastered more laws and divine powers and secret arts. The outcome of this battle was already decided. In the beginning, Zhu Qingqing and the experts of the Gui Yuan Association attacked Yun Yao and the others without caring about their own safety. The two sides were locked in battle and fought with each other. But after 100 seconds, the situation became clear. 8 of the 24 experts of the Gui Yuan Association were killed on the spot. The remaining 16 people were also seriously injured and were forced to retreat. Even Zhu Qingqing, who was the strongest, was severely injured and had to cover everyone's retreat. Yun Yao and Ji Ku took advantage of the situation to pursue and attack. The more they fought, the braver they became. They trusted Ji Tianqing and were not worried about his safety. They were focused on chasing after the experts of the Gui Yuan Association. After 15 minutes, they had chased them for 15,000 li. Along the way, all the mountains and forests were turned into ravines and ruins. The 16 surviving experts of the Gui Yuan Association were all killed by them. Only Zhu Qingqing was still alive, but her limbs had been cut off and she was seriously injured and unconscious. Therefore, everyone captured Zhu Qingqing and brought her back to Five Cloud Mountain to find Ji Tianqing and the vice president. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already retreated 20,000 li. He had exchanged more than 2,000 blows with the vice president and was clearly at a disadvantage. He was in a suppressed state. Helpless, he could only fight as he retreated, tangling with the vice president. However, he had mastered hundreds of ultimate techniques and all kinds of trump cards. In a short period of time, the vice president, who was a second-level divine lord, could not kill him and could only injure him slightly. Chapter 28:18. While Ji Tianqing and the vice president were fighting, they kept flying towards the south. When Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others caught up with them, it was already an hour later. At this moment, the two of them were fighting fiercely in the sky above a forest. All kinds of divine powers and secret techniques collided in the sky, emitting dazzling divine light. The five-colored brilliance covered an area of thousands of miles. The earth-shattering shockwaves destroyed the surrounding forest for tens of thousands of miles, turning it into ruins. The battle between the two of them was not something that ordinary people could interfere with. Even Yun Yao, Jiku, and the others could not get close to the vice president, let alone cause any harm to him. Therefore everyone flew to the battlefield and stopped. Bai Long carried the severely injured and unconscious Zhu Qingqing and shouted, "Bastards of the Origin Returning Association, stop." The vice president was chasing after Ji Tianxing. He was murderous and his attacks were very fierce. Suddenly he sensed Bai Long and the others' auras and heard Bai Long's shout. He quickly stopped chasing. He turned around and saw Yun Yao, Jiku and the others standing in the sky, safe and sound. Zhu Qingqing was severely injured and unconscious. She was carried in by Long's hand and looked extremely miserable. The vice president frowned and his face became more and more ugly. Shock flashed in his eyes. The experts under this monarch's command were all killed by them? How is this possible? The vice president could not believe it. He could not accept this result. He was shocked and angry. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot and his body was trembling. Taking this opportunity, Ji Tianxing silently waved the burial of heaven and used a sword technique. Sword of Daytime. He made a sword technique with his left hand and activated the power of 12 laws. His right hand slowly stabbed forward. His movements were a bit slow. It was as if the sword in his right hand was not the burial of heaven but a huge mountain. At the same time, the burial of heaven also used all its strength and gathered the power of the divine sword at one point. Whoosh! Ji Tianxing stabbed forward and a white light appeared in the sky. That white light was not a sword ray, but a ripple-like circle. It looked like a circle of white light, but there were 12 layers of it that contained different nomological powers. Shwa! The white halo instantly disappeared. It was as if he had never appeared. However, the vice president suddenly realized that he was in grave danger and woke up with a start. All the hairs on his body stood on end and a chill ran down his spine. He even sensed the aura of death. Subconsciously he teleported to the sky 1,000 miles away. At this moment Bai Long held the unconscious Zhu Qingqing in his left hand and a sword in his right. He slashed down viciously. "Old man, open your eyes and look carefully." Swoosh! Swish! The sword slashed down fiercely, instantly cutting off Zhu Qingqing's 2 pointy ears. Blood spurted out and the 2 ears fell from the sky. When the vice president saw this scene, his heart trembled and boundless anger gushed out of him. Even though he knew that the white dragon was deliberately provoking him. However, when he saw Zhu Qingqing being humiliated by the white dragon, he was still furious. In his rage, the vice president was distracted and his consciousness was somewhat scattered. Although this was only a matter of an instant. But in a fight between experts, victory and defeat was decided in an instant. When the vice president came back to his senses and was fully on guard against Ji Tianxing, it was already too late. A thumb-sized white halo appeared out of thin air between his chest and abdomen and suddenly exploded. Bang! There was a loud, muffled explosion. A wash-basin-sized bloody hole was blown open in the vice president's chest and abdomen, and blood splattered everywhere. His internal organs and intestines all gushed out from the bloody hole and scattered in the sky. Suddenly suffering such a heavy blow, the vice president's expression changed drastically, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Puff! He bent over, his palms covering his abdomen, revealing an incomparably painful expression, and could not help but let out a scream. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream exploded in the sky, spreading for tens of thousands of miles. The vice president never thought that Ji Tianxing would actually hide a trump card after exchanging thousands of blows with him. This strange and unpredictable daylight sword, Ji Tianxing had never used it before. What was even more hateful was that the white dragon actually captured Zhu Qingqing and cut off Zhu Qingqing's ear in front of him. If not for the white dragon's influence, how could he have been hit? Beggar! The vice president was furious and his eyes turned blood red. Despicable bastard! This lord will tear you into pieces. He roared crazily and hurriedly circulated his energy to suppress his injuries. Swish! In the vice president's chest and abdomen, a dazzling 5-colored divine light lit up and quickly blocked the bloody hole. He took out a purple-black divine whip and pounced at Ji Tianxing with murderous intent. His goal was very clear. As long as he killed or captured Ji Tianxing, this battle would be over. With a flash of light, the vice president teleported behind Ji Tianxing and waved the divine whip at Ji Tianxing. Crack! The divine whip flashed with lightning and fire, carrying an incomparably violent power of laws, and smashed toward Ji Tianxing's head. At this time Yun Yao and Ji Ku had already met up with Ji Tianxing. Facing the vice president's fierce attack, the three of them did not dodge and actually joined forces to counterattack. Sword breaking the 9 heavens. The three of them shouted coldly at the same time and waved their divine swords and divine spears with all their strength, releasing the most violent power. Swish, swish, swish. 3 dazzling 5-colored divine lights converged into a giant 7-colored sword that was tens of thousands of feet long and pierced toward the vice president. That giant sword was even more dazzling than the sun. The world within a radius of tens of thousands of miles was illuminated brilliantly. In the giant sword, more than 10 types of power of laws were superimposed, reaching an incomparably shocking level. Boom! In the next moment the giant sword struck the divine whip. The lightning and fire that filled the sky were shattered and splashed in all directions. The divine whip was not damaged, but it was sent flying backward by the shock, smashing toward the vice president. The vice president's expression changed wildly, his eyes revealing thick surprise. He never would have thought that 3 weak celestial deities added together could actually release such a terrifying ultimate skill. The power of that sword was comparable to a 3rd-level divine lord's attack. The vice president was seriously injured, his strength greatly reduced. He naturally did not dare to take it head-on. Swish. He retreated without hesitation, teleporting 1,000 miles away. However, he had just retreated into the sky 1,000 miles away. That giant sword that could split heaven and earth also crossed 1,000 miles of space and slashed down. This time, the vice president did not have time to dodge and was directly struck by the giant sword. Bang! An earth-shaking loud bang exploded high in the sky, reverberating throughout the firmament. An invisible sound wave spread throughout a radius of 30,000 miles, shaking until heaven and earth were trembling. Under such a terrifying collision, the giant sword collapsed on the spot, turning into billions of divine light fragments. Like graceful butterflies, they scattered down from the sky. The shock wave that destroyed everything swept a radius of 30,000 miles, flattening the surrounding mountains and forests, leaving behind a scene of devastation. And the vice president's outcome went without saying. He actually had half of his divine body hacked off by the giant sword. Only half of his body remained, smashing into the ruins with a loud bang. The other half of his body had long turned into dust and blood rain that filled the sky, no longer existing. Chapter 28:19. 10 breaths later. An earth-shattering explosion, a divine light that blotted out the sky, and a destructive shockwave gradually dissipated. Tens of thousands of miles of heaven and earth returned to peace. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and Ji Ku were all panting violently and could no longer use their ultimate skills. After all, they had already consumed nearly half of their divine power and were a little weak. Ji Tianxing was still fine. He had the heaven-mending pearl and the 5 elements world to replenish his energy, so he was fine. Yun Yao and Ji Ku's foundations were a little weaker, so they had consumed more energy. Their faces were a little pale and their breathing was a little chaotic. They had to rest for a while. This was the first time the 3 of them had jointly used sword-breaking 9 heavens. The power was extremely terrifying. The result was also beyond their expectations. The 2nd-level Divine Lord Realm Vice President was actually seriously injured by them and half of his divine body was destroyed. Until now, Yun Yao and Ji Ku still found it hard to believe. Were they actually so powerful? They were clearly only at the 4th or 5th level of the Celestial God Realm. How could they injure a 2nd-level Divine Lord? Were they dreaming? At this moment, Ji Tianxing threw down a sentence and flew thousands of miles away with the Burial of Heaven sword. I'll go over first. You guys follow me later. Swoosh. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing flew away. 3 breaths later he flew thousands of miles away and landed on the ruins. There was a deep pit with a radius of 1,000 feet on the ground, surrounded by cracks and ravines. The bottom of the deep pit was filled with soil. The vice president, who only had half a head, an arm and a leg left, had long become a bloody man. He lay at the bottom of the pit, his body covered in soil, panting violently. Even though he struggled a few times, he couldn't get up. There was no other way. His injuries were too serious. Not only was his divine body seriously injured, but it was also almost destroyed. Even his godhead had a few cracks on it and it was on the verge of shattering. If the power of sword breaking 9 heavens was increased by 40%, his divine spark would be shattered. If that was the case, he, a divine lord, would die. Huff. Huff. The vice president's body was burning with bloody flames. He was urging his life force to quickly heal his injuries. Moreover, he was using the laws of the earth and the 5 elements to absorb the divine power of heaven and earth in an attempt to recover his strength. He was a divine lord powerhouse. Even if he suffered such heavy injuries, he would not give up easily either. He knew that he had failed his mission today. The most important task at hand was to escape from this place and return to the headquarters of the Gui Yuan Association. As long as he went into seclusion to recuperate for 100 or 200 years, he would be able to recover to his original state. However, Ji Tianqing came. He was destined to have no chance. Swoosh. Swoosh. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He formed a seal with his hands and quickly cast a seal. Divine light flickered between his fingers, quickly forming mysterious characters one after another. The glowing seal characters fell to the bottom of the pit like raindrops and flew into the vice president's body. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianqing set down 2 Tao Lord seals, sealing away the vice chairman's body and divine spark. As a result, the vice president's body stiffened and he was unable to move. His godhead was also sealed and he couldn't use his god force or divine sense. Just like Qi Huangji, he was a fish on the chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. After setting up 2 seals, Ji Tianqing was still worried. He took out a Tao Lord seal from his interspatial ring and inserted it into the vice president's body. Swoosh. The 1-foot-long golden seal immediately burned and turned into golden flames, merging with the vice president's divine blood. Thus, a bomb was planted in the vice president's divine blood. As long as Ji Tianqing willed it, he would be able to detonate his divine blood and kill him completely. After doing all this, Ji Tianqing was relieved and put away the burial of heaven. He waved his hand and a golden light wrapped around the vice president, pulling him up from the bottom of the pit and throwing him on the ground. Vice President, how does it feel to have all your power sealed? Ji Tianqing looked down at him condescendingly and asked with a smile. The vice president couldn't move at all. He could only move one eye and half of his mouth. He roared in shame and anger, "Despicable bastard, you should be cut into pieces and have no descendants. But you're still so arrogant after being a prisoner?" Ji Tianqing raised an eyebrow, his eyes cold. At this moment, Bai Long, Ji Wushuang, Qian Yu and Hei Long flew over. Everyone happened to hear this sentence and Bai Long was furious. "Old man, I have to make you understand your situation." As he spoke, Bai Long slashed his sword across the vice president's face. Swoosh. A palm-sized golden ear was cut off and fell to the ground with a thud. Blood spurted out from the wound. Cutting off the ear wasn't enough, so Bai Long chopped off the vice president's leg. Originally, he wanted to cut off the vice president's genitals. However, Yun Yao and Jiku also arrived, so Bai Long had to give up on that idea. He put away his divine sword, looked down at the vice president and sneered, "Old man, I'll give you a chance to reorganize your words." The vice president was so angry that his whole body trembled. He roared in a hoarse voice, "How dare you humiliate me like this? Give me a quick death. Kill me. Kill me now." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said in an indifferent tone, "From the moment you attacked me, you were destined to end up like this. You've fallen into my hands, so it'll be hard for you to die. Also, you and Zhu Qingqing can't die now. You're still useful, so I'll let you live." The vice president's body stiffened. He suddenly thought of something and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. "Little bastard, what do you want?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "Since you've already guessed it, why are you still asking?" The vice president was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. Blood gushed out from his only eye as he roared hoarsely, "You despicable bastard, how dare you?" Ji Tianqing frowned and said, "You're too noisy." The white dragon immediately understood and slapped half of the vice president's face. Bang! With a muffled sound, half of the vice president's face was smashed into a bloody mess. His godhead suffered a heavy blow and his divine soul fell into a coma. He immediately calmed down. "Let's go and see that poor guy." Ji Tianqing took Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang and flew to Qian Yu's back. The white dragon carried the unconscious Zhu Qingqing and the vice president and flew to the black dragon's back. Qian Yu and the black dragon flew across the sky and rushed towards the five-cloud mountain. Along the way, Ji Tianxing and the white dragon released their divine senses and covered the surrounding 30,000 miles, searching for Qi Huangji along the way. 10,000 miles away from the five-cloud mountain, Ji Tianxing found Qi Huangji. He was running for his life in a primitive forest, jumping and shuttling between the trees. Not far behind him, more than a dozen ferocious-looking demon beasts and divine beasts were chasing after him. Although those demon beasts and divine beasts were weak, most of them were at the empty god realm, a few were at the true god realm, and only one divine beast was at the heavenly god realm. Normally, those demon beasts and divine beasts wouldn't dare to provoke Qi Huangji. But it was different now. Qi Huangji's godhead was sealed, so he couldn't use his divine sense and divine power. He could only rely on his powerful divine body to run for his life and try to get rid of those demon beasts. Chapter 28:20. Qi Huangji was in a sorry state. He was already injured. His ears and fingers had been cut off and he had been stabbed a few times. While he was escaping from Five Cloud Mountain, he had been attacked by many demonic beasts and divine beasts. There were a few more claw marks and wounds on his body and he was bleeding profusely. His face was covered in dust and his heart was filled with anger. He needed to vent it out. "You be asterisk stards from the Gui Yuan gang. You've caused me so much trouble. I swear that no matter what method I use, I will exterminate you." Qi Huangji roared furiously, his murderous aura exploding. At that moment, a black shadow the size of a mountain appeared in the sky above the forest. Qi Huangji looked up at the sky and saw an ice-blue heavenly fox the size of a mountain charging toward him. Sensing the heavenly fox's heavenly god aura, he was so angry that he cursed. F***ck. Another mythological beast that was even more powerful had appeared? Do you want to kill me? The next moment he saw a few heavenly gods standing on the heavenly fox's back. One of them was a handsome black-haired young man in a white robe. There were also two devastatingly beautiful, incomparably noble goddesses. There was also a little girl who was so beautiful and cute that it took one's breath away. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this was a perfect and happy family of four. Qi Huangji was stunned. He could not help but exclaim, "Oh my god! Which be asterisk starred is so lucky. He actually has two peerless wives and such an adorable daughter." He looked at the black-haired young man in jealousy and was stunned. Then his expression became extremely interesting. He was so excited that his face flushed red with embarrassment. That lucky be asterisk starred was his savior, Ji Tianxing. While Qi Huangji was still in a daze, the golden leopard caught up and pounced on him. The golden leopard opened its bloody mouth and extended its incomparably sharp claws, as if it was about to swallow someone whole. Qi Huangji was about to be pinned to the ground by the golden leopard. Even if he did not die, he would be bitten into pieces. At the critical moment, Ji Tianxing waved his right hand and shot out two dazzling golden sword auras toward the golden leopard. Bam! Bam! With a muffled sound, a beam of sword light pierced through the leopard's head and shattered its godhead. Another sword light pierced through its back and nailed it to the ground. Plop! The 30-meter-long golden spot leopard crashed into the forest with a loud thud. Only then did Qi Huangji come to his senses and hurriedly dodge. Even so, the violent shockwave still sent him flying. He rolled and crashed into the forest. When he crawled out of the forest, Ji Tianxing had already landed in front of him. The dozen or so demonic beasts that were chasing after him were also intimidated by Ji Tianxing's invincible might. They turned around and fled. The celestial fox stopped above the forest. Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang stood on the back of the celestial fox and waited quietly. "Ha! I'm finally saved. Brother Tianxing, you're too awesome." Qi Huangji smiled as if he had just survived a disaster. He excitedly pounced on Ji Tianxing and opened his arms to hug him. Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. He avoided his hug and said, "Don't be so excited. My wife and children are still watching." Qi Huangji looked up at Yun Yao and the others with a stunned expression. However, he did not dare to be impolite. He retracted his gaze after a glance and praised from the bottom of his heart, "Brother Tianxing, are they your family members? No wonder you never let them show their faces. So that's why. Brother, you are definitely the luckiest and happiest person in the world. Don't you know that peerless goddesses like your wife and daughter only exist in legends? From now on you are my brother." Ji Tianxing frowned and sneered. Your words are ambiguous. Be careful not to get beaten up. As he spoke, he reached out and patted Qi Huangji's injured shoulder. Ouch. It hurts. It hurts. Brother. Brother, please stop patting me. I'm injured. Qi Huangji was in so much pain that he was about to cry. He quickly begged for mercy. Ji Tianqing smiled mockingly. It's good that you know it hurts. Stand still and I will undo the seal for you. Qi Huangji did not dare to talk back. He stood still obediently. Ji Tianqing used the divine eye technique to check his seal and then cast a spell to undo it. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Within 10 breaths, Ji Tianqing formed more than 30 seals with divine light and injected them into Qi Huangji's body. The seal on his godhead was immediately undone. His divine power recovered smoothly and he could use his divine sense normally. Qi Huangji did not care about healing himself. He asked anxiously, Brother Tianqing, where are the people from the Origin Returning Association? Did you get rid of them? Ji Tianqing said calmly, I killed them all. Huh? Qi Huangji was dumbfounded. His mouth was wide open in disbelief. Ji Tianqing did not bother to explain. He took him and flew toward Qianyu. Let's go back to the Mystic Light Cave first. Okay. Qi Huangji obeyed and quickly followed him. Ji Tianqing landed on Qianyu's back and stood with Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang. Qi Huangji looked at the four of them and felt a little ashamed. He was looking at them from afar. Now that he was closer he could see them more clearly. Yun Yao and the other two's beautiful faces and noble auras shocked him and made him feel like he was suffocating. Qi Huangji swore that he had never seen such a perfect goddess in his hundreds of years of life. The black dragon stopped 10,000 feet away. Only Bai Long, Zhu Qingqing and the vice president were on its back. Qi Huangji scratched his head and said awkwardly, Brother Tianqing, you can't squeeze in here. I'll squeeze in with Brother Bai Long. After saying that, he ran onto the black dragon's back. Ji Wushuang looked around. Qianyu's back was very wide. It could fit dozens of people. She blinked her big eyes and was a little confused. Mom, what's wrong with that big blockhead? Yun Yao smiled and said, He's probably afraid of your dad. Ji Wushuang nodded as if she understood. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku laughed inwardly. Then Qianyu and the black dragon flew across the sky toward the sea in the north. On the way, Qi Huangji did not circulate his energy to heal his injuries. He held an exquisite silver knife and squatted beside the vice president and Zhu Qingqing, gesturing repeatedly. Brother Bai Long, you don't know how vicious these two animals are. They kidnapped me to Mount Wuxia and tortured me with inhumane torture. They cut off my ears and fingers and even castrated me. Tell me, should I cut them into 1,000 pieces before I can vent my anger? Bai Long stood at the side and watched. He nodded in agreement. Yes, they should be cut into pieces. Qi Huangji frowned and said awkwardly, but they're both injured like this. One has no limbs and the other only has half of his body left. How can I torture them without killing them? Bai Long said without changing his expression. That's simple. Use the boning knife in your hand to carve words on their bodies. Carve the most vicious words. Then carve out their bones and joints and make necklaces for them to wear. Wow, that's amazing. Qi Huangji was so excited that his body trembled. His eyes lit up as he praised, Brother, you're good. Chapter 28-21. Qi Huangji was a hedonistic young master. But he was not sinister and vicious, nor had he done anything outrageous. Even if he was furious, he could not think of any torture that could relieve his hatred. He happened to meet Bai Long, who was an expert in this field. Even the boning knife in his hand was given to him by Bai Long. After hearing Bai Long's idea, he seemed to have opened the door to a new world and released the demon in his heart. He could not wait to pick up the boning knife and began to torture Zhu Qingqing and the vice chairman for the first time in his life. Perhaps because he was too excited, or too fresh and exciting, his hands were shaking. Bai Long watched from the side, sometimes admiring, sometimes frowning, and occasionally commenting. Young Master Qi, why are your hands shaking? The poop pattern on Zhu Qingqing's head is not carved properly. It's not vivid enough. The word, turtle, on the vice chairman's forehead is also crooked, like a child's handwriting. You should use more force. Otherwise, how can you gouge out the bone beads in her knees? Well, you've improved, Bai Long commented and instructed enthusiastically. Qi Huangji was very serious and focused. However, what the two of them did was bloody and unbearable to look at. Fortunately, Black Dragon was carrying them, so they could only endure such a bloody scene in silence. If it were Qianyu, she would have thrown them into the sea. 2 hours later, Qi Huangji had figured out the torture experience and was working hard to put it into practice. However, they had arrived at the Mystic Light Cave. Qianyu and Black Dragon flew into the island and landed at the bottom of the cliff. Qi Huangji reluctantly took back the boning knife and returned it to Bai Long. He said sincerely, "Brother Bai Long, thank you for your advice. You helped me vent my anger. I feel much better now." Bai Long nodded and said, "Master's going to check the mine. Hurry up and heal yourself. I have to watch these two animals." As he spoke, he kicked Xu Qingqing and the vice-chairman. Qi Huangji nodded quickly and said, "Well, you must watch them closely. Don't let them escape." After that, he took out a few elixirs and sat in meditation to heal himself. In any case, he left the matter of the mine to Ji Tianqing so he could rest assured. Ji Tianqing entered the mine alone and continued his unfinished mission. Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang did not follow. They sat on Qianyu's back and waited patiently. A moment later, Ji Tianqing entered mine number 9. When the overseers saw the two of them, they hurriedly saluted. The people in the profound light cave didn't know what had happened in the past few hours. Everyone was working normally. Ji Tianqing quickly checked mine number 9 and found no defects or dangers. Therefore, he quietly walked to a corner and used the Devour God art to quietly devour the power of the mine. An hour later, Ji Tianqing's strength doubled again, reaching the peak of the 7th level of the Celestial God Realm. If he wanted to break through to the 8th layer Heavenly God Realm, he still lacked a bit of foundation and strength. So he entered mine number 8 again. In this mine there was not only one vein but 3. However, they were all relatively small and low-grade mineral veins. Ji Tianqing checked around and didn't find anything strange, so he turned around and left. The situation in mine number 7 was very similar. There were 4 veins inside. They were not long strips that were dozens of miles long, but 4 small mountains buried underground. Ji Tianqing checked and found a hidden danger. The divine stones and metals contained in the 4 veins had different attributes. They were very close to each other and their powers repelled and clashed with each other. At present, the veins were relatively shallow, so there would be no problem. However, once they were 200 meters deep, the 4 veins would have problems. More than a dozen kinds of divine power would form a special force field, like an offensive array that would kill many miners. Therefore, Ji Tianqing used the law of earth to adjust the position and depth of the 4 veins. The hidden danger was eliminated. He entered mine number 6 again. In this mine there was a vein that was 200 miles long. Its grade was relatively high and its resources and divine power were abundant. Therefore, after Ji Tianqing checked the vein, he secretly devoured the power of the vein. Half an hour later, his power had reached the limit and he began to break through to the 8th level of the Celestial God Realm. He sat cross-legged in a corner of the mine with his eyes closed. His body was shining with a faint golden light. A few guards and miners saw this scene and showed a puzzled expression. However, they were afraid of Ji Tianqing and did not dare to come close, let alone disturb him. Time passed quickly. Unknowingly, another half an hour had passed. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing's body bloomed with golden light as dazzling as the sun. Rumble! The violent divine power in his body finally broke through the invisible barrier and surged even more violently, making dull sounds of wind and thunder. He finally broke through. Ji Tianqing successfully reached the 8th level of the Celestial God Realm. He circulated and regulated his breathing for a moment before ending his cultivation. Opening his eyes, he muttered to himself, "It's not easy to come to Mystic Light Cave. I have to devour the power of the vein as much as possible and quickly increase my strength. However, my strength increased too quickly and my divine Tao foundation is superficial. When I increase my strength a few times more, I'll have to stop devouring and strengthen my foundation first." Making up his mind, he hurriedly left mine number 6. Next, he checked mine number 5 to mine number 1 one after another. In these 5 mines, he discovered 2 hidden dangers and 1 flaw. Those 2 hidden dangers both had traces of being dealt with. Very clearly, the people of the City Lord Manor also discovered the problem and dealt with it. However, when they evacuated Mystic Light Cave, they recovered the hidden dangers. Including that flaw, the people of the City Lord Manor also used the array formation to deal with it. However, they removed the array formation when they evacuated. After Ji Tianqing discovered these problems, he thought of ways to solve them. During this process he even devoured the power of the 5 veins and his strength increased 5-fold. When he left the mine he already reached the peak of the 8th level of the Celestial God Realm. But he was not in a hurry to break through to the 9th level of the Celestial God Realm. He wanted to settle down for a period of time and stabilize his foundation before he cultivated and broke through. Ji Tianxing left the mine and returned to the mine under the cliff. At this time the night had just passed and the sky was gradually brightening. Qian Yu and the Black Dragon were still in the sky and everyone was waiting patiently. Although there were many palaces and houses in the mine for them to rest and live in. But they did not move in and did not want to appear in front of the Qi family's craftsmen and guards. Qi Huangji sat on the Black Dragon's back and was still healing his injuries. Except for his ears and fingers that could not be healed, his injuries were no longer serious. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing flew to Qian Yu's back and stood still. Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang all ended their meditation and got up one after another. Tianxing, your aura has changed again. Did you break through again? Yun Yao stared at him several times and asked expectantly. Ji Ku also noticed it and nodded. Brother Tianxing's aura has become stronger. You must have reached the 8th stage. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. Chapter 28-22. When the sun was high up in the sky, Qian Yu and Black Dragon carried everyone back to Qingshan City. When they were thousands of miles away from Qingshan City, Ji Tianxing put Qian Yu and Black Dragon into the Divine Pagoda. Yun Yao, Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang also entered the Divine Pagoda and went into seclusion in the distorted spacetime. Only Ji Tianxing, White Dragon and Qi Huangji were left. They brought the unconscious Zhu Qingqing and Vice President back to the Qi Mansion. This was the God Realm and there were all kinds of divine beasts. Even the rare dragons, phoenixes and qilins appeared in the boundless heaven continent. However, divine beasts like divine dragons and phoenixes should exist in the Dragon Realm. In the God Realm, divine beasts were still very rare. At least, there were only a few divine dragons with pure bloodlines in the entire Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. If Black Dragon appeared in Qingshan City openly, it would most likely cause trouble for the Qi family. The Qi Mansion was as peaceful as ever. Of course, the Qi family had obtained the Mystic Light Cave, and they would gain a huge amount of wealth in the next 10 years. This was like a shot of adrenaline, making the Qi family disciples and thousands of servants more loyal and motivated. Everyone wanted to perform well and win the favor of the family head and young master. Once their master was happy, they would be rewarded casually, and it would save them many years of hard work. In the secret room of the consecration court, the light was dim. Ji Tianxing and Qi Huangji sat on jade chairs, while White Dragon stood in the corner. The unconscious Zhu Qingqing and Vice President were lying on the ground like two corpses. These two unlucky fellows had their bodies engraved with obscenities and many disgusting pictures. Even their joints were hollowed out in several places. It was really tragic. Ji Tianxing glanced at Qi Huangji and asked, Huangji, have you vented your anger now? Qi Huangji thought for a while and nodded. Most of my anger has subsided, but this matter is not over yet. The Guiyuan Association has their eyes on you. These two fellows failed their mission and they will not let it go. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, So, we have to find a way to eliminate the Guiyuan Association to prevent them from taking revenge. In fact, the real reason he made this decision was because he didn't want to reveal his true identity. Up until now, only the members of the Guiyuan Association knew that he was an ascender. Furthermore, he also knew that he possessed the Heavenly Path's opportunity. This was a huge hidden danger that had to be eliminated. The guards of Azure Mountain City knew that an ascender had obtained the Heavenly Dao's opportunity and killed Lin Wuji. However, the guards of Azure Mountain City had not seen him with their own eyes, so there was nothing to worry about. Qi Huangji nodded solemnly. Brother Tianxing, I know that you must have your reasons and plans for not killing Zhu Qingqing and the Vice President. Just tell me, what should we do? Don't worry, I will fully support you on behalf of the Qi family. Ji Tianxing asked, You should know about the Guiyuan Association, right? Qi Huangji nodded. I've heard a little about them. They were formed by many Protoss and Ascenders. They're not tolerated by the Divine Nation, so they've been living in hiding, secretly opposing the Divine Nation. After saying that, he suddenly thought of something and asked, Brother Tianxing, don't tell me you're handing these two bastards over to the City Lord Mansion and having them send troops to annihilate the Guiyuan Association? Ji Tianxing shook his head. Even a fool would know why the city lord mansion would do something that doesn't benefit them. That's true. Qi Huangji nodded in agreement and sneered. The city lord mansion's people are very cunning. Even if the divine nation gives the order to annihilate the Gui Yuan Association, they won't do anything. Ji Tianqing asked again, if we attack the Gui Yuan Association, how much power can the Qi family mobilize? Qi Huangji thought for a moment and answered, without affecting the family's business and the Mystic Light Cave, I can mobilize 300 Sky God Realm guards. As for the Divine Lord Realm experts, my father is the only one and I can't command him. 300 guards? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment before nodding. That's enough. Qi Huangji asked doubtfully, brother, you plan to lead troops to attack the Gui Yuan Association and fight them head-on? That's not very realistic, right? I heard that the Gui Yuan Association is a cunning rabbit with 3 burrows. They've made their nest impregnable, easy to defend and hard to attack. Ji Tianqing pointed at Zhu Qingqing and the vice president and smiled. That's why I want to keep the 2 of them. They're of great use to me. Qi Huangji scratched his head anxiously and asked impatiently, brother, what's your plan? Just say it. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, the plan is in my heart. It won't work if I say it out loud. Just do as I say. Of course, I can tell you the first step of the plan. First, we'll use their communication tokens to ask for reinforcements from the experts of the Gui Yuan Association. We'll set up a trap and ambush. When we reach the 3rd step of the plan, the 2 of them will lose their value. At that time I'll have other methods. All right, mobilize the guards now and gather them outside the city as soon as possible. We'll be ready to set off at any time. It's only been a day. If we act now, we'll have the highest success rate. Qi Huangji nodded repeatedly and waved his fist excitedly. I'll listen to you. Once your plan succeeds, we'll wipe out the Gui Yuan Association and report to the God Nation. That'll be a great contribution. At that time, my father will at least be conferred a baron or viscount, right? After he finished speaking, Qi Huangji left the secret room full of anticipation and went to mobilize the troops. Ji Tianqing took Zhu Qingqing and the vice president's space rings and spent an hour deciphering them. He first used Zhu Qingqing's communication jade slip to send a message to one of the deacons. After an hour, he used the vice president's communication jade slip to send an order to the 3 deacons. After that, he rummaged through the 2 space rings and took the resources and divine items for himself. In the vice president's space ring, he found a list of names. It recorded the information of the members of the Gui Yuan Association for the past 200 years. Ji Tianqing thought that there would be a map of the Gui Yuan Association's lair in the 2 space rings. If he could get the map and understand the defenses of the Gui Yuan Association's lair, he would have 100% confidence. But he didn't expect that there would be no map in the 2 rings. The Gui Yuan Association is so cautious? A deacon and a vice president don't have a map? Ji Tianqing frowned and was a little disappointed. But he thought about it and let it go. However, these 2 people must know the Gui Yuan Association's lair very well. It doesn't matter if they don't have a map. When I attack the Gui Yuan Association head-on, I can seize their memories and get the map. Not long after, Qi Huangji walked quickly into the secret room. Brother Tianqing, I've gathered 120 guards and they're gathering 100 miles outside the city. The remaining 180 guards are in the other 3 cities and are rushing over at full speed. They'll be gathering outside the city in 3 days. Ji Tianqing nodded with satisfaction. Okay, let's start. Bai Long, bring Zhu Qingqing and the vice president. After that, he led everyone out of the secret room and flew out of the city. Chapter 28-23. Outside Green Mountain City. 100 miles away from the North Gate, at the foot of the North Gate Mountain. 120 Qi family guards were lined up neatly in armor and holding swords and sabers. Everyone waited quietly. No one made a sound. Swoosh. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light flew from the south. Ji Tianqing, Qi Huangji and Bai Long landed on the mountain peak. Seeing Qi Huangji appear, the 120 guards bowed in unison and shouted in unison, "Greetings, young lord." Qi Huangji nodded with satisfaction and introduced, "This is young Master Tianqing. He is the Qi family's honorary elder." The guards bowed again and shouted at the same time, "Greetings, Consecrator Tianqing." Qi Huangji said solemnly, "Today, Honorary Elder Tianqing and I will be working together to carry out a top-secret mission. If the mission fails, you may die on the spot. If the mission succeeds, you will be the heroes of the Qi family. I will reward you handsomely." The atmosphere suddenly became heavy and austere, and the 120 guards all revealed a resolute look. "We pledge our lives to you." Everyone roared in unison. Qi Huangji smiled with relief. He turned to Ji Tianxing and said, "Brother Tianxing, you can give the order now." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Bai Long and I will go to Sanmoon Mountain to make preparations. Take these guards and hide your tracks. Go to Sanmoon Mountain quietly and wait for my next order." Qi Huangji asked, "Sanmoon Mountain? Is it the Sanmoon Mountain 100,000 miles away in the northwest direction?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded. Qi Huangji nodded quickly. "We will be there in 6 hours." Ji Tianxing said no more. He turned and flew away with Bai Long. Then Qi Huangji took out 120 divine talismans and distributed them to the guards. Everyone used the divine talismans to hide their aura. Under Qi Huangji's lead, everyone flew across the sky and rushed to Sanmoon Mountain. Ji Tianxing and Bai Long were very fast. In just 2 hours they arrived at Sanmoon Mountain. This was a rather strange mountain. It was thousands of feet high and took up 300 miles of land. Below the mountainside there was a lush forest. Above the mountainside, there was a large area of sandy land with many boulders. The golden sand covered half of the mountain peak. It was said that every night when the moon rose, the bright moonlight would reflect on the mountain peak, reflecting dazzling and colorful illusions. It was magnificent and magnificent. The Sanmoon Mountain was called Sanmoon Mountain. It was noon, so they could not enjoy the beautiful scenery of the Sanmoon Mountain. Of course, Ji Tianxing and Bai Long were busy with their business and had no interest in appreciating it. The two of them surrounded the Sanmoon Mountain and set up the divine formation as quickly as possible. Sanmoon Mountain Talisman Man Talisman, a divine talisman of the Formation Mountain, of the divine formation. Of the mountain talisman, Talisman Man Mountain. One was a sealing formation while the other was a brutal killing formation. Any divine spirit below the Divine Lord realm would die as soon as they stepped into the range of the sealing formation. No matter how many people came, they would not be able to return alive. 2 monarch talisman formations, Ji Tianxing, Bai Long and the 120 Qi family guards. Such formidable power, even if a Divine Lord powerhouse came here, they would also be blasted into dregs. It was already afternoon and the sun was setting in the west. Another 4 hours passed. The 2 monarch talisman formations were finally completed. The sealing formation covered a radius of 500 miles, and the killing formation covered the entire Sanmoon Mountain. Moreover, the aura of the 2 divine talisman formations was almost undetectable. At this time, Qi Huangji arrived at the foot of Sanmoon Mountain with the 120 guards. Zhou Qi Huangji flew to the mountaintop and landed beside Ji Tianxing. He asked expectantly, "Brother Tianxing, are you done?" "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Take the guards and set up an ambush nearby. Some of you will hide your aura. Don't let them find you. Take the other group and hide underground in the south. Wait for my orders." "Understood." Qi Huangji nodded excitedly and left Sanmoon Mountain with the guards to set up an ambush nearby. In a short while, Qi Huangji and the 120 guards disappeared without a trace. Only when Ji Tianxing used the Divine Eye secret art could he detect their tracks. He was quite satisfied with the result. Then he asked Bai Long to hide in the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower. Only he, the vice president and Zhu Qingqing were left on the mountaintop. He began to act. The unconscious vice president was placed on a huge rock by him. At first glance, the vice president was sitting cross-legged on the rock, meditating. A large black robe and cloak covered his body. If one did not observe him closely, it would be difficult to notice that he was missing half of his body. Zhu Qingqing, whose limbs had been chopped off, also put on a large cloak and sat behind the vice president. On the surface he seemed to be resting with his eyes closed, waiting quietly. However, if one looked closely they would see that he was severely injured. His limbs had been chopped off. As for Ji Tianxing, he tore his white robe and wiped blood on his face and body. He lay on the huge rock with disheveled hair. At first glance she could tell that he was severely injured. His injuries were very severe and he had already fainted. Just like that he lay on the huge rock and waited patiently, waiting for his prey. At the same time, A divine warship that was thousands of feet long and flashing with golden light was rushing toward Sand Moon Mountain at lightning speed. There were more than 40 heavenly gods in this supreme-grade divine warship. These people came from 6 different divine clans and had strange appearances. Among them, 40 experts were all celestial deity realm 3rd level to 5th level. The 5 leading experts all reached 8th level and 9th level celestial god realm. In the Origin Returning Association, they were all deacons and had the same status as Zhou Xian. At this moment, the 5 deacons were gathered in a secret room and discussing. The leader of the deacons was an old man with white hair and a hunched body from the Snake God clan. His head was slightly flat and he had double pupils in his eyes. There were a few poisonous fangs in his wide mouth and his tongue was forked. Although he did not look good and his aura was dark and ruthless, he was the strongest. However, he was the strongest and had the highest status among the 5 deacons. Deacon Shi, I've already urged them. The divine warship is rushing towards Sand Moon Mountain at the fastest speed. A bald muscular man reported to the white-haired old man. Deacon Shi nodded slightly and sneered. The vice president trusted Zhou Xian too much. He only brought a few people and wanted to take that kid away from the Qi clan. The Qi clan has many people. That kid is an ascender and has the heavenly path's opportunity. How could he be so easy to deal with? Although the vice president succeeded. However, he was heavily injured and so was Zhou Xian. The men they brought with them were also killed by the Qi family's experts. We have to get to Sand Moon Mountain as soon as possible. We can't let Zhou Xian take all the credit. Chapter 28-24. Deacon Shi's words made the other 4 deacons nod their heads in agreement. That's right. Zhou Xian is the vice president's nephew. He has always been favored and trusted. Zhou Xian's ability is not as good as ours, but his position is higher than ours. Isn't it because of the vice president? So this time the 2 of them were greedy and rash. They killed more than 20 experts and were heavily injured themselves. They only have themselves to blame. That's right, Deacon Shi. If we only rushed to Sand Moon Mountain and brought them back to Hidden Dragon Island, it wouldn't be considered a merit, right? A skinny deacon with a black face asked. The other 3 deacons were silent. They looked at Deacon Shi and waited for his answer. Deacon Shi nodded and sneered. If things went so smoothly, we could only ask the vice president to reward us like Zhou Xian. However, both Zhou Xian and the vice president sent us a message, saying that the situation is very urgent. The experts and guards of the Qi family are still searching for them. If they are in danger, won't we have a chance to make a merit? Hearing his words, the 4 deacons' eyes lit up. They nodded their heads in agreement. That's right. That's great. I hope the guards of the Qi family can find them as soon as possible. If we rescue them when they are surrounded and their lives are hanging by a thread, it will definitely be a great merit. Thinking of this, the deacons felt better. They even couldn't wait. At this moment, an expert came to the door of the secret room and reported, Deacon Shi, we are about to reach Sand Moon Mountain. Let's go and see the situation first. Deacon Shi stood up and led the 4 deacons out of the secret room. The 5 of them stood at the front of the ship and looked ahead. A few thousand miles in front of them was an endless primitive forest. There was only a towering black figure standing in the middle of the forest. The 5 deacons could see clearly that it was a mountain that was thousands of feet high. Moreover, the scorching sun in the sky shone down on the top half of the mountain. It was very dazzling. Without a doubt, that was Sand Moon Mountain. When they were 5,000 miles away from Sand Moon Mountain, the divine ship started to slow down. The 5 deacons also released their divine senses to check the surroundings of Sand Moon Mountain and the situation on the mountain peak. Although they were here to receive the vice president, they did not let down their guard. 2 breaths later, the 4 deacons finished their investigation and shook their heads at the same time. The surroundings of Sand Moon Mountain are safe. There are no Qi family guards. Deacon Shi remained silent. His eyes emitted a faint green light as he carefully observed the forest and land around Sand Moon Mountain. After a while, he sneered and said, South of Sand Moon Mountain, there are more than 30 guards of the Qi family hiding underground 100 miles away. Although they are hiding underground and secretly approaching Sand Moon Mountain, how can they escape my detection? All 4 deacons knew that Deacon Shi had cultivated a special God Eye secret skill. They were not surprised by this answer at all. Deacon Shi, what should we do? Eliminate the Qi family's guards first, then go to the vice president's aid? Xianxia shook his head and sneered. If that's the case, will the vice president still feel the danger of death? Even if we annihilate the Qi clan's guards, how big of a contribution can we get? Wait a little longer. Therefore, the divine ship stopped 1,000 miles away in the clouds and quietly observed Sand Moon Mountain's movements. The 5 deacons' divine senses were all focused on the mountain peak. They clearly saw that there was a huge black rock on the mountain peak. The vice president, who was wearing a black robe and a cloak, was sitting on the huge rock and meditating. His divine power was very weak, and it seemed that he had suffered serious injuries. Zhu Qingqing was sitting behind him, and she also looked very weak. Both of her legs had been cut off, and her injuries were extremely tragic. The target of the Origin Returning Association, the ascendant called Tianxing, was lying on the huge rock covered in blood. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Seeing this, the 5 deacons were relieved. They could not help but secretly laugh and gloat. After a while, the 30 Qi family guards on the south side of Sand Moon Mountain rushed out of the ground under the lead of Qi Huangji. They flew across the sky at lightning speed and headed straight for Sand Moon Mountain. From the looks of it, they had obviously discovered the vice president and Zhu Qingqing. Swish swish swish. After 10 breaths of time, Qi Huangji and the 30 Qi family guards surrounded the mountain peak. The vice president and Zhu Qingqing were trapped in the encirclement. They were still sitting on the huge rock and did not react at all. They seemed extremely calm. Qi Huangji was anxious and angry. He shouted with a murderous aura, "Bastards of the Origin Returning Association, you have been surrounded. Immediately hand over young Master Tianxing or I will cut you into pieces." His voice was very loud and it could be heard from 1,000 miles away. The 30 Qi family guards also clenched their swords and pointed at the vice president and Zhu Qingqing. The atmosphere on the mountain peak was very tense and a bloody battle was inevitable. At this moment, the vice president, who was sitting still, slowly turned his head to look at the divine ship 1,000 miles away. He only glanced at it and then turned back. Deacon Shi and the others were far away and could not see the vice president's expression and eyes. However, they knew that the vice president knew that they were here. The vice president has already discovered us. There's no need to act anymore. Let's go and save them. Deacon Shi gave the order expressionlessly. Therefore, the divine ship flew across the sky and headed straight for the Sand Moon Mountain. Swoosh. The divine ship stopped in the sky above the Sand Moon Mountain. The 5 deacons stood at the front of the ship and bowed to the vice president on the mountain peak. They said in unison, "Greetings to the vice president." Deacon Shi stepped forward and smiled. "Vice President, we received your order and quickly gathered the elites in the association and rushed over as fast as we could. Fortunately, we did not disappoint you. We came in time." However, the vice president was still sitting on the huge rock and did not react. The 5 deacons looked at each other and secretly communicated with each other. Why is the vice president not saying anything? Could it be that his injuries are so severe that he does not dare to speak in case someone sees through him? That is very possible. He is a monarch god expert. He can still intimidate the Qi family guards by sitting there without moving. If he shows any weakness, the Qi family guards will attack. Deacon Shi frowned and thought for a moment. He ordered, "The 2 of you go and protect the vice president and Zhu Qingqing. The other 2 follow me and kill the Qi family guards first." After that, Deacon Shi took out a jade walking stick and attacked the Qi family guards first. The 2 deacons quickly followed. The 40 elites also rushed out of the divine ship and started to attack with their swords and sabers. The Qi family guards obviously did not expect this result. Under Qi Huangji's lead, everyone turned around and fled in panic. A bunch of cowards. Don't even think about escaping. Deacon Shi laughed with a murderous aura as he sped up his pursuit. At the same time, the other 2 deacons landed on the huge rock on the mountain peak to protect the vice president and Zhu Qingqing. End of chapter. Baidu Search Translator. Zefizi Editor. Defizo. No advertising message. Chapter 28-25. The 2 deacons protecting the vice president, Zhu Qingqing, were a bald, brawny man and a short, fat, middle-aged man with pimples all over his face. Little Xiao, the 2 of them landed on the boulder and ignored Ji Tianxing, who was unconscious on the ground. Their gazes landed on the vice president and Zhu Qingqing. With just one look, the 2 of them sensed that something was wrong. The vice president was missing half of his body. His breathing was weak and he had already fainted. Zhu Qingqing was also unconscious. Her limbs had been cut off. Because of this, the two of them sat stiffly on the boulder and did not react to anything outside. Previously, the divine worship was thousands of miles away, so they could not see what was going on. Now that it was so close, the two deacons could see everything clearly. How could this be? The two deacons looked at each other in disbelief. They immediately realized that something was wrong. This was very likely a trap. However, it was too late for them to realize this. Ji Tianxing, who had been unconscious all this time, appeared beside them like a ghost and silently swung his sword at them. Zhoush. The dazzling five-colored sword light, which carried the destructive power of the laws, instantly drowned the two deacons. Bam! With a muffled sound, the two deacons' necks were severed by the sword light and blood spurted out. The two heads were also smashed into pieces by the sword light, and a large cloud of blood mist exploded. The godheads inside shattered and flew into the sky. Before they could land on the ground, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and grabbed the two godheads. He crushed them with a ruthless pinch. Two 8th-level heavenly god realm deacons were instantly killed by him just like that. Until the moment of their death, the two deacons still did not understand what was going on. At the same time, Qi Huangji and the Qi family guards, who were fleeing in panic, suddenly stopped after running for 300 miles. Facing Deacon Shi and the elites of the Origin Returning Association who were chasing after them, they were not afraid at all. Instead, they smiled mockingly. Deacon Shi, who was at the front, immediately realized that something was wrong. He hurriedly stopped his pursuit and subconsciously turned his head to look at the huge rock on the mountain peak. Then he saw the two deacons being instantly killed by Ji Tianxing. Deacon Shi's body stiffened. His mind buzzed and he was dumbfounded. He simply couldn't believe that this was true. However, he was an experienced expert and immediately realized that he had fallen into a trap. He quickly shouted, "Stop! Stop it! We've been tricked. Quickly return to the divine ship and leave this place." Even though the Qi clan did not have many people, they still had a high chance of winning. However, Deacon Shi was cautious and didn't want to take any risks. He knew very well that the vice president and Zhu Qingqing were most likely crippled. That white-robed brat could kill two deacons in an instant, so of course he could kill him and the other two deacons as well. If they got entangled in a fight, it was very likely that they would all be wiped out. The other two deacons and 40 elite experts all stopped their charge upon hearing Deacon Shi's order. Everyone was filled with shock and disbelief. However, they believed in Deacon Shi. They turned around and fled without hesitation, flying towards the divine ship as fast as they could. However, at this moment, the two monarch divine arrays were suddenly activated. Swish! A dark golden light shroud covered the sky like a heavenly canopy, covering a radius of 500 miles. The entire area was instantly sealed. At the same time, a colorful light shield appeared out of nowhere and covered the entire Sand Moon Mountain. Qi Huangji and the Qi clan guards were outside the colorful light shield and weren't affected at all. Only Ji Tianxing, Zhu Qingqing, the vice president and the members of the Origin Returning Society were left on Sand Moon Mountain. Swish, swish, swish. Thousands of lightning and fire sword auras were released from the colorful light shield and rained down on Deacon Shi and the others. Instantly, a dazzling five-colored divine light filled the entire area. Swish, swish, swish. Bang, bang, bang. Boom. Tens of thousands of dazzling light swords repeatedly bombarded this area, erupting with deafening booms that shook the heavens. The 40 Origin Returning Association experts only lasted for 10 breaths of time in the sword light before they were all killed. The three deacons survived and weren't killed. However, they were severely injured and their bodies were covered in blood. After being severely injured, their combat power had decreased greatly. They couldn't fight back and they couldn't escape from the Monarch Divine Array. Only death awaited them. The three of them were in despair. They raised their weapons and shouted at the top of their lungs, "Stop! We surrender. Stop. Spare our lives." Therefore, Ji Tianxing snapped his fingers and the divine array immediately stopped. Thousands of colorful sword auras were suspended in the sky and stopped moving. The entire Sand Moon Mountain had disappeared. It had been reduced to dust by the sword array and was now a pile of ruins. Swish! Ji Tianxing landed from the sky and stood on the ruins covered in golden sand. The gazes of the three deacons fell on him, sizing him up carefully. Only then did the three of them see clearly. Even though Ji Tianxing's clothes were torn and he was covered in blood, He didn't have a single wound on his body. The three deacons looked at each other with bitter expressions on their faces. There was no doubt that this was a trap from the beginning. However, they didn't realize that they were walking into the abyss of death. Deacon Shi was the most cunning. He quickly knelt down and said sadly, "Young Master Xianxia, your plan is indeed brilliant and ruthless. We admit defeat. We beg you to let us live. As long as we can keep our lives, we are willing to be loyal to you." After saying that, he quickly looked at the other two deacons. The two deacons were stunned for a moment before they quickly knelt down and bowed to show their surrender. Ji Tianxing looked down at Deacon Shi and couldn't help but frown. At that moment, Qi Huanji and the Qi family guards flew over from afar. A total of 120 guards surrounded the ruins so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Everyone was very excited. They were immersed in shock and their eyes shone brightly. After all, more than 40 elites of the Origin Returning Society had been killed before they had even exchanged a single blow. This was a free credit. They had only come to Mount Sanmoon to put on a show with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing waved at Qi Huanji and said, "Huanji, let them clean up the battlefield and collect all the Godhead fragments and infinite space rings." Qi Huanji quickly nodded and went to carry out the task. More than 100 people landed around the ruins and used their divine senses to search for the Godhead fragments and infinite space rings. Ji Tianxing looked at the three deacons expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "Originally, I didn't plan to take in captives. Since you want to surrender and pledge your allegiance to me, you have to tell me what you are worth." The two deacons thought for a moment and said, "Young Master Tianxing, we are both level 8 heavenly gods and have rich combat experience. We can be your followers and guards." Deacon Shi was the last to speak, but he said in a low voice, "Young Master Tianxing, I am a level 9 heavenly god. Moreover, I am very familiar with the terrain and defenses of the Hidden Dragon Island. If you want to attack the Hidden Dragon Island, I am willing to be your guide." End of chapter. Chapter 28-26. You are a venomous snake. You know how to read people's minds. You are vicious. Ji Tianxing glanced at Deacon Shi and sneered. "Not only did you guess that I was going to kill my way into the headquarters of the Gui Yuan Association, but you also betrayed the association to survive. How can I keep a venomous snake like you who betrays his master for glory?" As he spoke, his eyes flashed with cold, murderous intent. The other two deacons lowered their heads and remained silent. Actually, they were laughing coldly in their hearts. Humph. Deacon Shi, oh Deacon Shi, you are really unscrupulous in order to survive. Now you have shot yourself in the foot. You old venomous snake. You always want to show that you are smarter than others. Do you think we are fools? How can young Master Tianxing take in someone as cunning and vicious as you? You are dead. Deacon Shi's heart sank as despair flashed in his eyes. However, he immediately calmed down and bowed. Young Master Tianxing, I am not a vicious person who betrayed the Gui Yuan Association in order to survive. In fact, I have already seen through the despicable, dirty ways of the Gui Yuan Association. I am not willing to be associated with them. On the surface, it looked like the Origin Returning Association was a shelter for the fallen gods and ascenders. It was a righteous act and a good deed. But in reality, it's an evil, depraved, and selfish gang. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's interest was piqued and he looked deeply at Deacon Shi. The other two deacons still lowered their heads. They did not refute or agree. They pretended that they did not exist and watched Deacon Shi make a fuss. Continue. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and gestured for Deacon Shi to continue. Although he could tell that the Gui Yuan Association was not a good thing from Zhu Qingqing and the vice president's words and actions. However, he did not know how bad the Gui Yuan Association was. Deacon Shi was encouraged and said angrily, "I was one of the earliest people to join the Gui Yuan Association. At that time there were only a dozen members. The president, senior god Gui Yuan, was very powerful. At the beginning he was saving people. The sky-splitting divine clan he belonged to had been massacred by the blood-flame divine country. He was the only survivor. Therefore he had to do everything possible to recruit more people and strengthen his own forces to take revenge on the blood-flame divine country. Regardless of whether it was the Protoss in distress or the Ascenders who were being persecuted, he would lend a helping hand and bring them into the Gui Yuan Association. But 400 years ago, when the Gui Yuan Association had grown to over 100 members, they had become selfish and depraved. Divine Lord Gui Yuan swore to take revenge, but his strength increased too slowly. Several hundred years had passed and he was still at the 4th level of the Divine Lord realm. Therefore he was bewitched by the vice president and began to plunder other people's secret arts and treasures. He even took away 80% of the cultivation resources that everyone worked so hard to get. At this point, Deacon Shi felt that it wasn't specific enough, so he gave an example to explain the situation. For example, my illusory divine eyes and poisonous mist are the bloodline abilities of my race. Deacon Lu was good at the spring of all trees, which could quickly heal all kinds of injuries. It was also the Lu clan's ancestral ultimate skill. Divine Lord Gui Yuan forced us to hand over our secret arts to him. In order to cultivate it successfully, he even forced us to give up our god blood. Not only the two of us, all the members of the Gui Yuan Association were like Divine Lord Gui Yuan's pets. Whoever's secret arts caught his eye, that person would have to hand it over to him obediently. Those ascenders from the lower realm would usually bring along large amounts of ancient god skills and treasures, which were all taken away by Divine Lord Gui Yuan. The most hateful thing was that Divine Lord Gui Yuan wanted to quickly condense the laws, so he forced us to hand over our power to help him increase his strength. Although he is still at the 4th level of the Divine Lord realm. But he will soon break through to the 5th level. Moreover, he has already grasped 39 types of divine arts and his true strength is comparable to a 5th-level divine lord. After pausing for a moment, Deacon Shi raised his head to look at Ji Tianxing and said in a mournful voice, "Young Master Tianxing, do you know how we feel? In name, the Gui Yuan Association took us in, but in reality, we have all become Divine Lord Gui Yuan's nourishment. He's like a blood-sucking demon and we're all pigs that he's rearing. When he needs us, we have to obey him unconditionally and let him suck our blood." 4th level Divine Lord realm about to break through to the 5th level, and even condense 39 types of laws. Ji Tianxing muttered with a frown, his eyes solemn. Although he could defeat the vice president who was at the 2nd level of the Divine Lord realm. But to kill Divine Lord Gui Yuan he did not have any confidence at all. This matter had to be considered in the long run. Deacon Shi's words exposed the true face of the Gui Yuan Association. Ji Tianxing finally understood why Zhu Qingqing invited him to join the Gui Yuan Association. And after he rejected, Zhu Qingqing monitored Green Mountain City, secretly keeping an eye on him. He had just left Green Mountain City when he was attacked by Zhu Qingqing and the vice president. Very clearly, when he was fighting with Lin Wuji, Zhu Qingqing had guessed that he had a heavenly Dao opportunity. From that moment onwards, Zhu Qingqing wanted to trick him into the Gui Yuan Association and offer him to Divine Lord Gui Yuan. Very soon, Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and stared at Deacon Shi, nodding slightly and saying, "This Divine Lord Gui Yuan has indeed been blinded by hatred." Deacon Shi nodded repeatedly and added, "The Gui Yuan Association has already become a tool for the president to seek personal benefits. All they do is kill and plunder. We have all suffered oppression and torture and have long wanted to leave the Gui Yuan Association. In the past 200 years, there have already been over 40 people who have tried to leave the Gui Yuan Association. But most of them were killed or executed before they could escape from the Hidden Dragon Island. After a small number of people escaped from the Hidden Dragon Island, they also went far away and concealed their identities." At this time, the skinny Deacon Lu at the side added a sentence in time. "In the past 2 years, Divine Lord Gui Yuan has sensed that everyone has disloyalty and is dissatisfied with him and the Gui Yuan Association. So he is considering planting some kind of deadly poison in our bodies to threaten our lives and force us to be loyal to the Gui Yuan Association." Ji Tianxing laughed coldly and said, "This method is vicious enough. However, the real way to maintain unity and loyalty is to treat the people around you well and win the hearts of the people. With his method, it is impossible to gain true loyalty. He will only gain a bunch of puppets." Deacon Shi smiled bitterly and said, "Divine Lord Gui Yuan also knows this, so he is still hesitating and has not taken action yet. Of course, I think he will make a decision soon. After all, he does not need everyone's loyalty. He only needs us to be his puppets and continuously contribute to him." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a playful tone, "Although you have surrendered, there is no trust between us. So I can only use a special method." As he spoke, he used his power to release 3 balls of thunder fire, which floated above the heads of the 3 deacons. The fingernail-sized thunder fire contained 4 kinds of violent divine power and had the mark of the heaven-mending pearl. Once it was implanted into the deacon's divinity, Their life and death would be controlled by Ji Tianxing. It would be useless no matter where they escaped to. Hurry up and read the latest chapters. Chapter 28-27. Looking at the 3 balls of lightning fire, the 3 deacons froze. They understood what Ji Tianxing meant, and they also understood his actions. If they were in his shoes, they would be even more ruthless than Ji Tianxing. However, they were still somewhat fearful and worried. Deacon Shi was more decisive. He nodded and said, "Young Master Tianxing, I understand what you're doing and will obey your decision. This is because I believe that your character is definitely not like Sir God Gui Yuan." Are you trying to trick me? Or are you reminding me? Ji Tianxing glanced at him and sneered. I wouldn't dare. Deacon Shi quickly lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Even if young Master Tianxing is like Sir God Gui Yuan, we will accept our fate. After all, we will be in deep trouble no matter who we follow. We are lucky to be alive. At least you know your place. Ji Tianxing snorted. He waved his hand and shot 3 balls of lightning fire into the bodies of the 3 deacons. The 3 deacons were very smart. They did not resist and allowed the lightning fire to enter their godheads. At this moment, Qi Huangji's mission was completed. He flew over excitedly and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. Brother Tianxing, the battlefield has been cleaned up. We have collected a total of 40 godhead fragments and 41 interspatial rings. After saying that, he held a ball of golden light in his hands and handed it to Ji Tianxing. The ball of golden light contained many godhead fragments and interspatial rings. Ji Tianxing took the ball of golden light and instructed, "Let's go to the setting sun territorial waters and find an island to carry out the second step of the plan. Also, give some rewards to the guards to motivate them." Qi Huangji quickly nodded in agreement. "No problem. I will do it even if you don't tell me." Then he pointed at the divine worship in the sky and asked, "What should we do with that divine worship?" Ji Tianxing said casually, "The divine worship is yours. You can take the guards with you." Qi Huangji excitedly agreed. He hurriedly gave the guards a reward of 20,000 god stones each. The guards did not pay any price. They only acted out a show and earned 20,000 divine stone. They were all very excited. Then Qi Huangji led his guards onto the divine worship. After studying it for a while, they started the divine ship and headed north. On the way to the setting sun ocean, the black dragon carried Ji Tianxing, the white dragon Zhu Qingqing, the vice president, and the 3 deacons and flew across the sky. Zhu Qingqing and the vice president were still unconscious. Ji Tianxing asked Deacon Lu to use his ultimate skill to treat their external injuries. They didn't look so miserable anymore. White Dragon was a little confused. He asked Ji Tianxing, "Master, the first step of our plan has been completed. These 2 guys have no more value. Why are we still keeping them?" "Of course it still has some value. Let's keep it for a while." Ji Tianxing dropped this sentence and sat on the dragon's head to do his own things. He kept the 40 quintessence fragments in his spatial ring, saving them for later consumption. He was inspecting the 41 spatial rings. Each spatial ring was filled with god stones, divine-level materials and various other resources. But it was a pity that these experts from the Origin Returning Association were each poorer than the other. There were less than 30,000 god stones in each spatial ring. All the materials and resources added up to less than 200,000 god stones. In comparison, the guards of the Qi family were richer than them. When Ji Tianxing placed all the spoils of war into a spatial ring, he couldn't help but look disappointed. Fortunately, we seized a divine worship. Otherwise, this battle would have been a loss. After all, the total value of these spoils of war was only about 5 million god stones. Qi Huangji gave the guards a total of 2,400,000 god stones as a reward. He now believed that Deacon Shi was telling the truth. These elites of the Gui Yuan Association had all been drained of blood by Divine Lord Gui Yuan. Ji Tianxing threw the 5 million cultivation resources into his interspatial ring and no longer paid any attention to it. Setting sun ocean. 20,000 miles away from the coastline, there was an island with a radius of more than 300 miles. The island was not big and it was surrounded by black reefs. There was a small mountain that was 3,000 feet tall on the island, surrounded by valleys and forests. There weren't many demon beasts on the island and they were very weak. All in all, this was an ordinary island that wouldn't attract much attention. Ji Tianxing chose this island to be the burial place of the elites of the Gui Yuan Association. The black dragon landed on the island and released a powerful divine dragon aura. As a result, the demonic beasts living on the island were all frightened and fled in panic. After a while the island quieted down. Under Ji Tianqing's orders, the 3 deacons took out their communication jade slips and sent messages to the people of the Guiyuan Association. Mr. President, after we arrived at San Moon Mountain, we successfully received the Vice President and Deacon Zhu. Although the Vice President and Deacon Zhu caught the Ascender, they were severely injured. However, both of them were seriously injured and their subordinates had all died in battle. After we left San Moon Mountain, we were surrounded by a large group of Qi family guards and suffered heavy casualties. Mr. President, in order to save the Ascender, the Qi family sent more than 200 guards to kill us at all costs. A few of our deacons were injured and more than half of the 40 brothers we brought were killed. Please send reinforcements. We have temporarily escaped the pursuit of the Qi family guards and are hiding on a nameless island 20,000 miles away from the coast. Please send reinforcements as soon as possible, Mr. President. The contents of the messages were similar. They were all asking for help from the Guiyuan Association and requesting reinforcements. Obviously, Ji Tianqing's plan was the same as the first one. It was still asking for help from the Guiyuan Association and attracting more elites to kill the Ascender. The difference was that the first time they asked for help, they used the Vice President and Zhu Qingqing's names. This time it was the 3 deacons who had personally sent the message for help. After the 3 deacons sent the message, they sat on the back of the black dragon obediently and didn't dare to say anything. Bai Long hesitated and asked Ji Tianqing worriedly, "Master, we have used this method once. Will the Guiyuan Association fall for it again?" Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, "About 80%. Sir God Guiyuan is not an idiot, but he is a little suspicious. 2 batches of people have been taken advantage of, so he will definitely be suspicious. But after thinking about it, he will definitely send reinforcements. After all, he is determined to get the Heavenly Dao opportunity. Even if he has to sacrifice half of the Guiyuan Association, he is willing." Bai Long thought for a while and asked, "Since Sir God Guiyuan is determined to get the Heavenly Dao opportunity, will he come personally?" "It is possible, but the probability is not high." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, "After all, the Guiyuan Association has already caught me and escaped to the Sun Sea region. They have escaped the pursuit of the Qi family and are hiding on this nameless island. Their situation is still considered safe. If Sir God Guiyuan were to come personally, wouldn't it be a loss of dignity and damage the president's dignity?" Bai Long nodded and smiled. "Master is brilliant. You have seen through Sir God Guiyuan's thoughts." End of chapter. Chapter 28. Although the second step of Ji Tianqing's plan seemed flawless, he was only 80% confident. After all, he could only guess and analyze Sir God Guiyuan's mentality, but he couldn't be sure. If Sir God Guiyuan lost his mind and came to receive them personally, it would be troublesome. Hence, Ji Tianqing had to be well prepared. Even if Sir God Guiyuan came, he couldn't be at a disadvantage in a head-on battle. "Bai Long, we have about half a day's time. We have to set up the formation quickly." Ji Tianqing took out a pile of divine weapons, divine talismans and divine stones from his space ring and prepared to set up the formation. Bai Long asked curiously, "Master, what formation are you going to set up this time?" Ji Tianqing thought for a while and lowered his voice. "Of the 2 divine formations that I set up in San Moon Mountain, only the sealing divine formation can be used. The monarch-level killing formation might not be powerful enough to deal with Sir God Guiyuan. Hence, I plan to set up a Heaven Punishment Sword formation." Heaven Punishment Sword formation? Bai Long looked confused. "When did you master such a sword formation? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Ji Tianqing knocked his head and chuckled. "Nonsense, this is a sword formation that I have just comprehended. Heaven Punishment Sword formation was born from the Heaven Punishment formation map in Kenshin's tomb. It was the vast and mysterious formation that was hidden in the chaotic fog. Back in the mortal world, Ji Tianqing had tried to comprehend the divine formation. However, his power was weak back then and he could only comprehend a little bit. Now that he had reached Heaven God Realm 8th level, he had a deeper understanding of the Heaven Punishment formation map. Combined with his sword principle divine powers, he comprehended the Heaven Punishment Sword formation. According to his estimation, the Heaven Punishment Sword formation's grade and power could only be considered as a lower monarch-level divine formation. However, the Heaven Punishment Sword formation was profound. It had 50 million formation veins and could derive 200 million changes. Its complexity was comparable to a middle monarch-level divine formation. It should be enough to deal with Sir God Gui Yuan. Then Ji Tianxing and Bai Long started to set up the divine formation. The master and disciple spent 300,000 immortal stones and a dozen talismans to set up a sealing divine formation that enveloped the entire island. 4 hours later, the monarch-grade sealing divine array was completed. The two of them then used more than 40 divine weapons, 2 million divine stones, and many divine-level materials to set up the heaven-destroying sword formation. The heaven-destroying sword formation was too complicated. Even if the master and disciple duo were powerful, they would still need 3 to 5 days to set it up. Obviously, there was not enough time. Fortunately, Qi Huanji arrived on the island with 120 guards on the divine ship. Everyone followed Ji Tianxing's instructions and worked together to set up the sword formation. In this way, the efficiency of setting up the formation was increased by 20 times. After a short 8 hours, the heaven-destroying sword formation was successfully set up. 12 hours had passed and it was already late at night. Therefore, White Dragon Qi Huanji and the 120 guards dived into the sea around the island and hid. Ji Tianxing, the vice president Zhu Xian, and the 3 deacons stayed on the island. They hid in a cave and set up a simple heavenly deity formation. Ji Tianxing continued to pretend to be dead. He lay motionless in the cave, covered in blood. Zhu Xian and the vice president were still the same. They sat motionless in the cave, meditating. Deacon Shi and the other 2 guarded the entrance of the cave and looked around cautiously. No matter how one looked at it, there was no flaw in this act. Everything was ready. All that was left was to wait patiently. As long as the fish took the bait, they could reel in the net. In the setting sun sea region, 50,000 miles away from the coastline, a divine ship was speeding southward. This divine ship was 20,000 feet long and looked like a golden dragon. It was lifelike and holy. There was no emblem or mark of any faction on the divine ship. After all, this was the rule of the Gui Yuan Association. In order not to expose their identities and backgrounds inside the divine ship, a burly man in a golden robe with a pair of golden wings was sitting in a secret room with his eyes closed. He had a dignified appearance with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He exuded a domineering aura. He was the founder of the Gui Yuan Association, Sir God Gui Yuan. This time he actually came personally. Other than Sir God Gui Yuan, there were 50 God clan experts with different appearances in the divine ship. Their strength was between the 2nd and 5th level of the Heaven God realm. Previously, the Gui Yuan Association had sent out 2 batches of experts. There were a total of 60 people, but they were all killed by the Qi clan guards. Now there were more than 100 people left on the hidden Dragon Island. They were all true God realm weaklings. Hence, these 50 experts were the final backbone of the Gui Yuan Association. Originally, Sir God Gui Yuan didn't plan to come and didn't want to send so many people. However, the opportunity of the Heavenly Way was fatally attractive to him. He spent thousands of years to build the Gui Yuan Association so that he could quickly increase his strength and take revenge on the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. It was a pity that the results were minimal. The 200 people in the Gui Yuan Association couldn't provide much help to him. The opportunity of the Heavenly Way was the biggest opportunity. For tens of thousands of years, there were a few lucky people who obtained the opportunity of the boundless heaven continent. For example, Divine King Jiuluo, whose name shook the continent, obtained the opportunity of the Heavenly Way and became a peak divine king. Not only did he restore the glory of the Jiuluo tribe, but he also severely damaged the Great Yan Empire and almost split it into pieces. Sir God Gui Yuan always remembered the legend of Divine King Jiuluo. He longed to obtain the opportunity of the Heavenly Way one day and take revenge willfully like Divine King Jiuluo. Until 20 days ago, Zhu Xian was overseeing Blue Mountain City's ascension pool. She accidentally discovered an ascender who was extremely powerful. Not only did he kill 5 Thunderpool guards, but he also killed the commander of the Thunderpool guards, Lin Wuji. When Zhu Xian reported this news to Sir God Gui Yuan, he immediately thought of a possibility. Opportunity of the Heavenly Way. Only the opportunity of the Heavenly Way could allow the Ascender to be so powerful when he just entered the divine world. At that moment, Sir God Gui Yuan was extremely excited. He was so excited that his blood was boiling. He was very sure that the opportunity that belonged to him had come. The heavens were looking after him. He had to obtain the opportunity of the heavenly way no matter what. Only this opportunity could help him quickly become stronger and take revenge on the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. Hence, Sir God Guiyuan tried all means to kill Ji Tianxing. Even if the first two groups failed and suffered heavy losses. However, the fact that the vice president had captured that ascender was a great piece of news. Not long ago, Deacon Shi and the other two sent a message, requesting Sir God Guiyuan to send someone to receive them. After Sir God Guiyuan received the news, he was suspicious and apprehensive. But after weighing the pros and cons, he still decided to send someone to receive them. In order to prevent any changes and ensure that nothing went wrong, he even came to receive them personally. As long as he could obtain the opportunity of the heavenly way, he would pay any price. At that moment, a purple-robed, single-horned elder walked quickly to the door of the secret room. Sir President, we are about to reach the Nameless Island. End of chapter. Chapter 28-29. The purple-robed elder was from the Golden Rhino God clan. His body was sturdy, his face was huge, and there was a golden horn on his forehead. His surname was Jin, and he was the last deacon of the Guiyuan Association. After a while, the door of the secret room opened. Dressed in a golden robe, Sir God Guiyuan walked out. Deacon Jin quickly went forward and advised in a low voice, "Sir President, the Qi family is just a merchant family in Green Mountain City. How could they be so powerful that they not only killed more than 60 of our experts, but also injured the vice president? I feel that there's something fishy about this. We have to be careful of any traps." Sir God Guiyuan nodded and said expressionlessly, "Of course I know that there's something fishy about this. Deacon Shi and the others might have been captured. They already have resentment in their hearts and are not loyal to me. It's also possible that they've surrendered and pledged their loyalty to the Qi family." Deacon Jin was stunned and asked, "Sir President, since you've guessed that there's something fishy about this island, why do you still want to go?" Sir God Guiyuan glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Why not? I've been waiting and plotting for nearly 1,000 years to find the Heavenly Dao opportunity. Now that the Heavenly Dao opportunity has appeared, how can I let it go? Even if the Qi family has set an ambush on that island, what's there to be afraid of? With the Qi family's power, even if Qi Tianlong comes personally, he's not my match." His words were very confident and his tone was very domineering. Deacon Jin frowned and hesitated for a moment before asking, "What's your plan? We'll go to the island directly, kill the Qi family and kidnap that ascender?" Sir God Guiyuan sneered, "Although I'm confident, I'm not stupid. Why would I step into a trap?" After a pause, he ordered, "When we arrive at that sea area, bring people to the island first and check if there's a trap. I'll hide in the dark and observe. If you're attacked, I'll save you. If we're overthinking and everything goes smoothly, I won't have to show up." Deacon Jin thought for a moment and quickly nodded, "That's good. If it's a false alarm, you won't have to show up to avoid affecting your prestige." While they were talking, the divine ship flew for tens of thousands of miles. It didn't take long for the divine warship to reach the sea. 10,000 miles away from the Nameless Island, Sir God Guiyuan quietly left the divine ship and hid in the clouds high in the sky. He silently approached the small island and secretly observed the situation. Manager Jean and the 50 experts boarded the divine ship and flew straight to the Nameless Island. Shwa. A dazzling golden light pierced through the dark night, illuminating the Nameless Island. The dragon-shaped divine warship stopped right above the island, 1,000 feet above the mountain peak. Ka. The door to the divine ship opened. Manager Jean flew out alone and stood in the night sky looking down below. The 50 Guiyuan Association experts all gripped their weapons, ready to charge out and fight at any moment. "Deacon Shi, where are you?" Manager Jean shouted loudly at the island below him. After a while, 3 figures flew out of a cave on the island. They were the 3 deacons. They cautiously scanned their surroundings and only looked up at the night sky after making sure that there was no ambush. Seeing Manager Jean and the divine warship, the 3 of them looked as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. "That's great. Manager Jean, you are finally here. We have been hiding here for most of the night and you are finally here." "Oh right, Manager Jean, when you came, did the Qi family guards notice you?" Even though the divine warship had entered the island and the fish had already taken the bait, the 3 deacons still did not forget to act. Moreover, their acting was very realistic. When Manager Jean saw the three's reaction, he sneered in his heart. However, he didn't show any signs of abnormality. Instead, he replied enthusiastically, "Deacons, in order to complete the mission, you have taken on such a dangerous task. You have worked hard and contributed greatly. Don't worry, we have already checked the surroundings before coming and did not find any traces of the Qi family guards. This place is safe. Quickly bring your men here and we will return as soon as possible." The three deacons looked at each other and felt that something was amiss. Manager Xi secretly sent a voice transmission to the other two. Something is not right. Manager Jean clearly brought helpers here, but he did not let them show themselves. He must have become suspicious and is putting on an act with us. The other two exchanged looks, indicating that they understood. Manager Xi looked up at the night sky and said to Manager Jean, "Manager Jean, we are all injured and cannot move freely. Especially the Vice President and Manager Zhu. Their injuries are the most serious and they have been unconscious for a long time. Don't waste any more time, quickly send someone to help. Also, that Ascendant has been knocked out by us. We have been watching over him." Deacon Jin's eyes gleamed when he heard the words Ascender. Even though he had guessed that there was an ambush here, his mission was to take Ji Tianxing away. Therefore he was hesitant. After weighing the pros and cons in silence, he said, "Manager Xi, even though you are injured, it should not be a problem to carry a few people. Don't waste any more time, quickly bring them out." Manager Xi hesitated for a moment and thought to himself, this won't do. The mission that young Master Tianxing gave us was to lure them to the island. Now that they are suspicious and do not show themselves in the divine worship, they could escape at any time. Moreover, I have to ask if Sir God Gui Yuan is here? Thinking of this, Manager Xi asked loudly, "Manager Jean, why are you the only one here to receive us? Where is Sir President? Is he here?" Manager Jean sneered in his heart but did not show any flaws on his face. He shook his head and said, "Sir President is busy cultivating in seclusion. How could he come to receive us personally? What are you still waiting for? Quickly bring them out." Manager Xi was even more hesitant. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's divine sense voice transmission suddenly sounded in his mind. "Manager Xi, do as he says and send us to the divine worship." After receiving Ji Tianxing's order, Manager Xi did not hesitate anymore and shouted to Manager Jean, "Okay. Wait for a moment, Manager Jean, I will bring them out now." Then the three managers returned to the cave. Manager Xi carried Ji Tianxing while the other two carried Zhu Qingqing and the vice president. They flew towards the divine worship in the night sky. At first glance, Ji Tianxing, the vice president, and Zhu Qingqing's injuries were very severe and they were unconscious. Seeing this, Manager Jean narrowed his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing, carefully observing him. Of course, he could not see through Ji Tianxing's background and could not detect Ji Tianxing's strength. However, he instinctively felt that something was not right, so he stopped Manager Xi. "Manager Xi, I want to check this ascender." As he spoke, he took out a treasured sword and slashed towards Ji Tianxing. Manager Xi was shocked and subconsciously dodged to the side. However, this action made Manager Jin's expression change and he sneered. Obviously, Manager Xi was exposed. End of chapter. Chapter 28:30. Deacon Xi, what do you mean by this? Deacon Jean sneered at Deacon Xi and asked, "Not only are you hugging this kid, but you are also afraid that I will hurt him. What? Have you betrayed the Gui Yuan Association and joined him?" Deacon Xi reacted quickly and immediately thought of a countermeasure. He angrily scolded, "Deacon Jean, what nonsense are you talking about? Are you out of your mind? Don't forget, this kid has a special identity and has a lot of opportunities. The president is determined to get him. We are working for the president and we can't make any mistakes. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences." Deacon Xi's acting was very good and Ji Tianxing couldn't help but praise him. Deacon Jin's probing failed and he was stunned for a moment. He couldn't tell if it was real or fake. However, he didn't want to cause any trouble, so he cupped his hands and smiled apologetically. "Deacon Xi, please calm down. I was just joking." "Nonsense." Deacon Xi angrily scolded and flew into the divine ship with Ji Tianxing in his arms. Immediately after, the other two deacons also brought the vice president and Zhu Qingqing into the divine ship. From the beginning to the end, everything seemed to be going smoothly, and there was nothing strange around the island. Deacon Jean frowned in confusion and muttered to himself, "How can it be so smooth? Did the president and I think too much? Forget it. Let's not care about this. As long as we can catch that ascender, we will have succeeded. After saying that, he also entered the divine ship. After a few breaths, the divine ship turned around and left the island, flying towards the north. After Deacon Shi and the other two entered the divine ship, they sat in a secret room and waited quietly. They didn't show it on their faces, but they were actually very nervous. Deacon Shi found an opportunity to ask Ji Tianxing, "Young master, didn't you set up a large array on the island? How can we leave the island? Are you planning to use this divine ship to sneak into the hidden dragon island?" Ji Tianxing still pretended to be dead and secretly transmitted, "Calm down, don't panic and don't reveal any flaws. This Deacon Jin is suspicious and I suspect that Sir God Gui Yuan is also here, but he is hiding in the dark to observe. So we have to find a suitable opportunity to act." Deacon Shi was even more puzzled and asked worriedly, "Ah? Monarch God Gui Yuan came personally? If that's the case, then we can't leave the island. Without the help of the array, we will all be killed by Sir God Gui Yuan." "I know what I'm doing," Ji Tianxing replied calmly. Deacon Shi was helpless and could only secretly signal the other two deacons to calm down and not panic. Soon the divine ship had flown 8,000 miles away from the nameless island. Inside the divine warship, Manager Jean and the 50 experts gradually let down their guard. The process went very smoothly. Everyone was secretly blaming themselves. Seemed like they had wrongly blamed Deacon Shi and the other two. Right at this moment, a golden-robed figure suddenly appeared in the sky above the nameless island. He was Sir God Gui Yuan, who was hiding and observing in secret. Just now he used his secret skill to detect that there were more than 20 heavenly god experts hiding at the bottom of the sea to the east of the island. He immediately realized that those people must be the Qi family's guards. I was right. Deacon Shi and the other two have betrayed us. They actually cooperated with the Qi family to set up an ambush on this island. Sir God Gui Yuan sneered with a hideous expression. "So what? Your acting is too realistic and you have trapped yourselves in it. Now that the divine ship is far away from the island, let's see how you will deal with this." Then he slowly raised his palms and activated his mighty divine power to strike at the sea to the east of the island. Bam bam! 2 mountain-sized golden palms pierced through the night sky like a scorching sun and hit the blue sea. In the deafening loud noise, a huge abyss was formed in the sea to the east of the island. The sea water in this area was completely emptied. A small part of the sea water turned into huge waves and rushed into the night sky, while most of the sea water evaporated. The destructive impact hit the seabed that was full of sand and reefs, creating 2 deep pits and splashing sand everywhere. The seabed was blasted into pieces and a few thousand-miles-long gullies were formed. 16 of the 22 Qi family guards who were hiding at the bottom of the sea were killed on the spot. 6 other guards were severely injured and fell into the sea with blood all over their bodies. They struggled violently. Such an earth-shattering commotion caused huge waves to rise within 1,000 miles of the sea. The nameless island also shook violently and countless huge rocks rolled down from the mountain. "Ha! Ants from the Qi family, go and die." Sir God Gui Yuan laughed and his face was filled with disdain. Naturally, the divine ship that was thousands of miles away from the island also felt the power of Sir God Gui Yuan. Ji Tianxing, Deacon Shi and the rest changed their expressions immediately. Manager Jean also revealed a startled expression as he thought to himself, "Is the president crazy? Didn't everything go smoothly? Why did he expose his whereabouts? Did the president discover that there was an ambush on the island?" Thinking of this, he turned his head and looked at the secret chamber that was 10 feet away. At this moment, the door of the secret chamber that had been tightly shut was already open. A dazzling golden light shot out like a bolt of lightning. "Oh no! There is indeed a trap." Deacon Jin's expression changed. He did not expect this. However, it was too late to say anything now. Bam! Manager Jean was sliced in half by a pitch-black divine sword with a dull thud. The 2 halves of his body fell in the hall with blood splattering everywhere. Even his godhead had been shattered by the divine sword. Deacon Jean, who was a level 8 heaven god, died on the spot. Before he died, the last thing he saw was a mysterious black sword and a valiant face. Isn't he the Ascender? Wasn't he severely injured and unconscious? So all of this was fake. This was the last thought in Deacon Jin's mind before he died. The next moment, Ji Tianqing swung the Burial of Heaven sword and turned into a golden whirlwind, pouncing on the experts of the Gui Yuan Association in the hall. Deacon She also rushed into the hall without any regard for her own safety. She waved her palm and used her unique skill to release a raging green poisonous fog. In the blink of an eye, the dark green poisonous fog filled the entire hall and shrouded the 50 experts. These experts were corroded by the poisonous fog and immediately went limp all over. Blood flowed out of their orifices and their divine powers became chaotic. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Hundreds of dazzling golden sword lights bloomed in the hall and swept across like a tornado. Wherever they went, flesh and blood splattered and bones flew everywhere. In just a few seconds, more than 40 experts of the Gui Yuan Association were killed by Ji Tianqing on the spot. The few experts who were lucky enough to survive were also severely injured. They ran out of the hall in panic, trying to escape from the divine ship. The other 2 deacons were already prepared. They carried Zhu Qingqing and the vice president with one hand and used their unique skills with the other to attack. Bam, bam, bam. After a series of muffled sounds, those experts were also beheaded and died on the spot. End of chapter. Chapter 28:31. Sir God Gui Yuan stood in the sky above the sea. He looked down at the sea and was using his special skill to investigate the seabed within a radius of a few thousand miles. He believed that the guards sent by the Qi family were definitely more than the 20 over people. There must be many more guards hiding around the island. He wanted to find all the guards and kill them all. But at this moment, in the night sky 10,000 miles away in the north, there was a thunderous sound. Kaboom! Sir God Gui Yuan frowned and instinctively turned to look. Then he saw it with his own eyes. A dazzling golden sword light that was 10,000 feet long bloomed from the inside of the divine battleship and cut it in half. The golden light soared into the sky and illuminated the night sky. The divine battleship was destroyed and hundreds of millions of pieces splattered out. The wreckage of the divine warship burst into blazing divine flames and fell from the sky, crashing into the ocean with a loud thud. Bastard! Sir God Gui Yuan was instantly enraged and killing intent surged out from his body. After all, the dragon-shaped divine battleship was his ship. It was also the most precious divine battleship in the Gui Yuan Association and was worth hundreds of millions of divine stones. The Gui Yuan Association had always been poor and Sir God Gui Yuan was very stingy. So when the divine battleship was destroyed, his heart ached. Damned beast, I will tear you to shreds and grind your bones to dust. As he roared, Sir God Gui Yuan did not bother to search for the Qi family guards and rushed to the sea in the north. Swoosh, swoosh swoosh. He teleported 4 times in the night sky and arrived at the place where the divine battleship had fallen. It only took him 4 breaths of time. Such terrifying speed surpassed most middle-level Sir Gods. It showed that he was very powerful. Experts who had reached the Sir God realm were divided into 3 levels: upper, middle and lower. Sir Gods from the 1st to the 3rd level were called lower Sir Gods. Sir Gods from the 4th to the 6th level were called middle Sir Gods. Sir Gods from the 7th to the 9th level were naturally upper Sir Gods. Above them there were peak Sir Gods. Of course, this was common knowledge in the realm of the gods. Ji Tianqing already knew this, so there was no need to elaborate. The flames in the sky dissipated and the night sky returned to darkness. Ji Tianqing, dressed in a white robe and holding the sword of burial of heaven, stood proudly above the sea. The 3 deacons stood behind him and looked at Sir God Gui Yuan with a complicated gaze. Deacon Shi's eyes were gloomy and his face was expressionless. He held a dark green divine hook in each hand. The other 2 deacons held Zhu Qingqing and the vice president in one hand and held their divine swords in the other. They looked at Sir God Gui Yuan cautiously. Seeing such a scene, Sir God Gui Yuan was so angry that he laughed and sneered. Very good. You actually joined forces to put on a show to ambush me? The 2 deacons avoided his gaze, not daring to look him in the eye. Deacon Shi was fearless. He roared in a low voice, Sir God Gui Yuan, you guessed right. We did betray you. But have you ever wondered why we betrayed you? We thought of ourselves as the elites of the Gui Yuan Association and considered ourselves to be your confidants and right-hand men. But what about you? What do you take us for? A pet? Or a slave whose blood you sucked? Sir God Gui Yuan was stunned for a while, then he raised his head and laughed. Ha! Ungrateful be asterisk starred. If I didn't save you, you would have been killed. How could you have survived until now? If I didn't ask you to join the Gui Yuan Association and protect you, you would all be hiding in hiding. All of you are still in hiding and some of you are even dead. What qualifications do you have to criticize me? Deacon, she said in a low voice. That's right. You saved our lives. But you wanted to make use of us from the very beginning. Plus, we have been loyal to you for so many years. We worked hard without complaint. We have already repaid your kindness. Bolsh *. Sir God Gui Yuan roared angrily and roared, I saved you. Your lives are mine. Deacon, she wanted to refute. Then Ji Tianxing waved his hand to stop him. He sneered at Sir God Gui Yuan and said, Is there any meaning or need to argue about betrayal? Sir God Gui Yuan nodded slightly and sneered mockingly, Yes. There's no need. After all, the 4 of you are already dead. Sir God Gui Yuan pointed at the 3 deacons and sneered, I won't kill you easily. I will skin you alive and cut you into pieces. Plus, I will bring you back to the hidden Dragon Island and execute you in front of everyone. This monarch wants everyone to see the consequences of betraying this monarch. Then he pointed at Ji Tianxing and sneered, Kid, as an ascender who just ascended to the realm of gods, it's unbelievable that you are so powerful. But the more powerful you are, the happier I am. Because it means that the opportunity of heaven way that you have obtained is powerful enough. This is heaven's will. This is heaven's gift to me. Ah. Sir God Gui Yuan laughed complacently. He looked at Ji Tianxing with passion and greed. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly. After he finished laughing, he shook his head and sighed with pity. So pitiful. Sir God Gui Yuan's smile disappeared and he asked, What did you say? Ji Tianxing spread his hands and said indifferently, I am laughing at you for not knowing that you are about to die. You are so stupid that you are pitiful. Sir God Gui Yuan's eyes turned colder and he sneered, Little bastard, do you think you can provoke me with such a clumsy method? Aren't you good at scheming? Using one scheme after another to deal with me? First, you plotted against the vice president and Zhu Xian and used their names to ask for help. Second, you killed the 40 experts that Deacon she brought and captured 3 of them. Now you have set up a large number of ambushes on that nameless island, waiting for Manager Jean to bring his men to walk into the trap. But you didn't expect me to see through your scheme and come here personally. Speaking of this, Sir God Gui Yuan sneered with disdain. Now I am alone. I am not on the island nor am I in your ambush. The 4 of you are about to be killed by me. What other schemes do you have? Let me tell you, in the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks are futile. Hearing these words, Deacon Shi and the other 2 became anxious and worried. After all, they didn't dare to fight with Sir God Gui Yuan. That would be courting death. Ji Tianxing also showed a confident smile and said slowly, you think you've seen through my scheme, so you're fearless and complacent. But have you ever thought about it? I had long guessed that you would personally come to receive me, and that you would hide in the dark and not show yourself. So I changed my plan slightly and lured you out. Until now, everything is going according to my plan. What? Sir God Gui Yuan instantly creased his eyebrows and there was a flash of vigilance in his eyes.